All right, Monday again.
It's Monday.
Much Monday.
Hey,
It should be on a shirt somewhere or something.
Yeah, it should be.
Really?
We gotta
Like
work
on a sleeve or something?
We'll work on that. Hey, we're Power and Speed, 908-751-0211 if you care to call.
And like us on the Facebook, the iTunes. You're going to want to share this one, I'll tell you. So we got a real special guest here tonight.
Do you want to do the introduction, Ted? Do you think you're going to trip over your dick trying to do that?
We have Matt Happel from Sloppy Mechanic fame. They sent me out there to pick him up. I couldn't find him in Easton. Then they call me. They tell me he's on his way driving. I come back.
Where did all that come from?
I don't know. He's winging it. He's over to word count and he's winging it. So welcome, Matt. You can talk now.
Thank
he's
you,
just sitting there
guys.
looking dumb.
Yeah, he's just like, wow.
People are actually listening.
What do I do now?
It's actually really good to have somebody in studio because the interaction, when you're trying to do it over the telephone, you don't get the visual cues
Yeah,
from
like
people.
you can't
So
look at us.
yeah, so it's actually pretty good. And I mean, we were just talking. You got a whole bunch of questions that came into you. I mean, there's so much we can go over.
Yeah, we'll have more than we can even do in a day.
You got to stay up on the mic too.
Okay.
There you go.
There we go.
So
yeah, and if you want to pull back, just pull the mic back. That's all.
yeah,
if
you can
wanna
pull
sit
right
back.
A.
Well, it looks like we got new listeners coming on here, too.
Nice.
I posted because a lot of people probably were like, how the hell do I listen to that?
Right,
So
I
I
s-
posted the Mixler link.
Yeah, lots of people. It's amazing. We were just talking about how few people can actually
Find
find
it.
podcasts.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that hard. I guess maybe the Android guys are a little more challenged because
Shut
it's not. I'm not picking on you, stupid people. I'm just saying that it's not on the phone.
No, I think the people are just generally challenged.
Android people?
All people.
Okay.
I mean, how could it be 2017
I'm-
you can't find a podcast?
I'm finding iPhone people that are challenged at it, too.
Yeah, I
so
mean,
it just goes that way.
We're on Google Play. We're on everything.
Okay.
iHeartRadio, all that
We're
crap.
nationwide. Adam Carolla carries us.
We're worldwide. Who's
What?
kidding?
I think I just made that up.
I think
Yeah.
you just made that up too.
I might have.
So Matt, let's start by going over what is sloppy mechanics for the people that don't understand what it is, because this has got to be something, and we talked about it before, that you get a little irritated by by what some of the people think
Yeah.
that it really means.
And I even recently made a video, like it says, what is sloppy mechanics for 2017? Because there's so much, people wondering what it is. But basically it's like, it starts as a giant like self-help group and like a documentary for how to build like cheap economical horsepower. So it's something you can always go to and see like combinations that work or anything that we're trying, and a lot of it I think is most attractive part of it for me was like automotive myth busting.
Yeah.
People would say something doesn't work, and I generally am like a hugely skeptical person. If you tell me it doesn't work, I want to do it myself and find out why it doesn't work. Because chances are, like, and especially when I got into hot rodding, I found that a lot of people were just repeating something that someone said to them a long time ago that they
No.
don't fully understand.
That can't possibly
that
be
doesn't
right.
happen.
That's all that my initial, because my skepticism and everything else is when someone's like, nope, that doesn't work. My friend does that. I go, why doesn't it work? And then they hit a giant roadblock. And I'm like, well, you're fucked now. If you can't explain why it does or doesn't work, then you don't understand it. So why are you saying anything about it? And then they're like, you're a dickhead. You don't understand. But I'm like, well, I understand more about it than you do already, apparently. And that's why you're frustrated at me. So, yeah. So then I started digging on stuff like that. And people are like, I was really like surprised that people are like, it was a pride thing when people were like, I got $10,000 in my motor.
Mhm.
And everyone goes, wow, look how big that guy's dick is. I mean, motor. And they're like, well, I'm like, what? What are you doing with that? What are you doing with a $10,000 motor? Not a whole lot. I'm not really impressed. And then they're like, well, you're an asshole again. And I'm like, no, you're the asshole. You spend $10,000. You're trying to impress people with dollar bills. Just throw it in the fucking air or something, or
Yep.
like donate it and say that you donated $10,000 instead of did nothing with it with a piece of iron.
Instead of burnt it.
Yeah, instead of being a jackass with it.
It's actually probably kind of bad for the engine builders on here because we're telling them, hey, look, you don't need to do this.
Well, for certain things, yeah. Like I think there's also something. A lot of people hate sloppy mechanics because they think that I'll say that quality stuff isn't worth it, and I say that's not what it is. It's most of what I do is budget building, and of course, the people selling a product are going to tell you need a product, of course.
Yeah.
And some of those people do a really good job, and it's totally worth it. But other times, for you or someone else or what you want to do, it doesn't matter. And that's why, like, I'll video myself building a rear end with like leaves and an impact gun. And people are like, you're an asshole. That's stupid. That's not possible. And I'm like, it's been in my truck for 2 years and it's fine.
Well, a lot of
Still.
people see, I mean, like for me, I know the side of it, like trying to be super cautious with everything. Neurotic clean, neurotic measuring, double, triple, quadruple check, still not sleeping, like just, it really gets to you. But then you look at a guy who fixes something at a gas station for somebody who would knock a piston out from the bottom, take some Scotch-Brite, hit the crankshaft that already hurt a bearing, and put a new bearing in it and send a guy on his way, and you never hear from him again.
Yeah.
So there's a wide range of what will work for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely a wide range. But, and I don't think we're going to be affecting Ninja Builders. I think what Matt does more than anything, it's just my opinion, is he gets people, more people into the game that may not have been able to get there.
Yeah.
Because financially.
Mm-hmm.
I see myself as a giant enabler, either for people who shouldn't be building cars,
Ruining
people
lives
that-
for people everywhere.
or people that just need
Nice job,
need the
Robin Hood.
guidance. Yeah. Because there's some people genuinely like I made a thing about it the other day where what makes like everything that I do worth, because people are like, how can you just deal with all these idiots all the time? And I'm like, well, once a month someone will make a post, like I made like a funny meme about it, and it's like the guy crying and clapping, like the MVP award or whatever. And it's like someone comes out of nowhere, says they read everything, bought everything, just read and listened to the stuff, built a car. They've never done fuel injection. They've never done a modern swap. They just read it and did it and loaded my base tune and watched some of the informational stuff and made like 5 and change to the tire and been driving it for 6 months, and the car foot brakes 10s. And they, like I said, I try to cater the most to the ice cream and burnouts. Crowd, like take your kids for a ride, just have fun, like that kind of thing, and do rolling burnouts at 80 miles an hour.
Do you, I got to ask an important question. This is what you do for a living?
No, I knew that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's just totally for fun.
So you're just a white knight.
Yeah, I just do it for. I manage data centers at a hospital for a living. I'm an IT guy. Quote
Pardon
unquote.
me. Wow, that's what he does.
Well, not really, but like Matt Blasco, IT guy.
Yeah,
a lot of IT guys jumped into this because their brain works.
Well, it makes sense.
Part of it was too, like I started doing. I got into computers as a hobby when I was younger, and I started doing it through school, and it became my job. And then when you're done doing that all day, you don't want to touch them again. So I started messing with cars like at the end of high school and got into that and saw the same thing, like problem solving and doing the most with what you have. And so it was like a way to get away from IT work.
So the website doesn't make any money?
No, the website itself, isn't attached to anything.
So he's an idiot like we are.
Yeah.
I do make money off YouTube, and now I started a Vimeo page where I sell like lessons for HP tuners, and I'm going to start
That's a
doing
good one.
Oh, no shit.
I'm doing one for Megasquirt soon, like Megasquirt based products, how to tune with it. And it's just like because it's time consuming to do that stuff and then give away the lessons. So I think it's easier to sell them on Vimeo. And I've done a lot of like self-help stuff on YouTube.
So you're doing it for Megasquirt.
Yeah, it's a bunch of stuff is already up for HP tuners, and I'm going to do stuff for like basically like my buddy owns EFI Source, so a lot of it's going to be like specifically for the Gold Box. But if you have a car or like a turbo motorcycle that runs on micro, same things can be applied, but a lot of it is going to be for the more complex like features based like back end with MS3 based products.
Got it. Who's that other guy that used to do MS3 stuff?
Really?
Sorry. Anyway,
come
all
on
right.
now.
Let's get to some of the questions. No, Mike, you got questions or
First question: LS Edit or EFI Live? I mean, or HP tuners?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say LS1 Edit's old school.
Yeah, old school.
HP. I use HP tuners because my friend at HP tuners at the time when I got interested in tuning late model Chevys, so he was able to like guide me through that the most. So I like HP tuners just simply because I've used it so long. And they're all complex in their own way. Some parts of EFI Live are better, I hear from people that use it, particularly in licensing. I think it's easier to get like a volume license in EFI Live, and then EFI Live has certain things for certain operating systems where you can have like nitrous tables where you can enable something through an input in the stock computer, and it will automatically pull timing and like certain things like that. Now HP tuners doesn't really have that. But HP Tuners does have custom operating system stuff for like speed density and stuff like that. But I haven't really touched EFI Live at all, so I can't tell you. Some people tune both.
Yeah.
So they would be, and then it's difficult to ask them a question because they might favor one or the other.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, that's something that, like, looking at forums about this stuff, it's almost as good as the cathedral versus rectangular port stuff.
Yeah.
The guys fight back and forth constantly.
And they won't admit that it's something, a personal
Sure.
thing that they like, when they could just say, personally, I like this, but both do the same damn thing.
Mhm.
It's like Android versus iPhone. They're
Yep.
both goddamn smartphones. Whatever one you like, personally, just use it.
I would imagine that, like, what happens is somebody gets comfortable with one,
Of course.
and they just, that's what they're
Stick with
familiar
it.
with.
It's easy then, because when even if you, obviously with cars, you would never run into a situation where it gives you a problem that one that never has before. So,
Okay.
so if you know the operating system really well and something is different, you're like, I know what to chase at least.
Right. Now, there was a reason I actually asked that, because in the factory computers, because let's face it, if we're talking about budget builds
Yes.
for most people,
Yes,
a factory computer is a home run.
absolutely.
I mean, they're very powerful, actually.
And
lot
you
of
have
people-
one.
And you have one in the
a lot
car?
of people don't realize how capable it is.
Sure.
Yeah, they all think that the OEs are idiots when they don't realize that those computers are probably way more sophisticated than
Yeah.
stuff you're buying.
A lot more development.
It's just, I guess, a matter of if you can get to the things you need to
Yeah.
be able to make those changes.
Yep.
So with like taking the GM computers through the generations, I guess the first generation or like Gen 1 stuff is L98 stuff, right? Like chip, like no burn, like, you know, they got to burn a chip and put
Yeah,
it
like
in.
like the tune port and stuff like that,
Right.
right? Yeah.
And then Gen 2.
Because L98 to me is like a modern Gen 4 LS that comes in like DoD only.
Yeah.
something. Yeah. So you mean TBI?
Yeah, they're recycling. They're
Yeah.
recycling.
Yeah,
names
they
now.
are. LT1 and everything.
When they said LT1, I'm like, who's the fucking moron?
Well, you know, they
Okay,
picked
then.
the LT1. That was used years ago.
Yeah.
And
And, then
then-
used again.
And then it was used for the reverse cooling,
Yep.
you know, screwball motor that was in the middle, which would be Gen 2.
third time.
And now they put it out again.
Yep.
So, but yeah, so Gen 2 would be reverse cool, small block, you know, before we went to the LS configuration. And then we start into Gen 3, which is what everybody talks about, which is LS. Now, what are the ranges of the factory computers that are in them? And is there one that's preferential to start with from another?
I think in my opinion, because I've done so much with it, the PO1, like I said, that the 99 to 06 ish drive-by cable, because it's funny, like there's always blend years. I mean, without going into a lengthy explanation, GM like blends stuff over years, but it's called. I actually did a video on YouTube the other day when I did flex fuel integration with the older generation ECUs. That's what's on my Colorado right now, as I did a flex sensor and it automatically adds spark and fuel based off of the percentage, so you can mix it, not have to worry about it. Which is like a lot of aftermarket ECUs have that now, so that's the push for some people. But I wanted to explore the capabilities of that. But I think the PO1 is the easiest one to like learn to use. You can either take like a completely stock O2 Silverado, do a bunch of bolt-ons, tune it with the mass air meter, understand how it works, and then once you get like you understand the functions that the stock computer does, you can start to get nuts from there and go speed density, start making a ton of power. The only issue with the stock computer is there's not a lot of safeties. Like if you have a really good aftermarket standalone, it's going to have really good closed loop fuel control, and you give it an air fuel, like a plot for like an air fuel target table. So it's always going to want to shoot for that target, and most of them work really well. So even if like something weird's happening, like your fuel pressure dips off or something else, it's always shooting for that target. The stock computer goes into open loop and it just runs what's on the fuel table. So if you have some sort of catastrophic fuel pressure loss or something else happen, goodbye. But most of the time you can put it in there and make it safe enough that, I've put cars together and just thrashed them for like months with just the flash in it, and it's fine.
It's funny that you brought up like getting a Silverado or just a regular truck, because that's what I was just talking to somebody about the other day. I said, yeah, Todd, it was
Trying to
you.
find something for
So
you.
we need one of those piece of shit trucks, like find something for $1,000 and just start.
The best, I always tell people the best platform is like a O2 2500, because it comes with the ADE, it comes with a decent rear, it comes with the good motor, it comes with a good it comes with a good computer, all the wiring, everything's there. You just buy like a $2,000 retired 2500 and add a turbo and start learning like a little bit with HP tuners. And I mean, the limit of the older motor is the skinnier rods, but if you pour in enough power up top, it's not that bad. But if you buy like an '06 Silverado, like the Cat Eye, usually has, if you buy like a 5.3 1500 and put an 80E in it, you have a race truck basically. You can make 800. You could put like an off-shelf VS S480, make 800 rear wheel with the stupid truck, and get kicked out of every track and haul stone on the weekend. Like it's ridiculous how capable something like that is for cheap. And I always say, like, if you want to get your feet wet, you can do that. Learn how to tune the meter, add a cam, bump like the running airflow to get the idle to work correctly, like little stuff like that. And as you build confidence, you can just slap a turbo on and floor it.
How about a Tahoe?
Same thing.
Yeah.
There's a guy just recently. That's a good subject. There's a guy named Barry Cook who comes to Sloppy Mechanics Dyno Days. He bought like I forget what year it is. It's like a 05. But he put an L33 in it and like a 72 millimeter Borg, did a 4L80E swap. It's 2-wheel drive, makes $850 to the tire. He just went $999 at 137 off the foot brake and like a 6,500 pound Tahoe. That's a completely stock aluminum 5. We called L33 the race motor.
Yeah.
Shane Cook. I'm sorry. Right there. There's a picture of the Tahoe.
Yeah, we'll get that posted.
Wow, look at that.
But talk about like an achievement for, because I pushed my Colorado recently and made a ton of power, but I turned the power back down to about 780, 800 tire to make those 970 foot brake passes. But a hell of an achievement is that guy's been slowly working up on it for years, hasn't really broken it to my knowledge, and just it's 6,500 pounds.
That's
like,
amazing.
It might not be that heavy, but it's a fucking Tahoe. Like it's big.
Well, it's 6,000 if it's anything.
It's got to be at least 6,000.
Yeah.
So I estimated 65, but that's rolling. 137 trap. It's on pump and meth.
Crazy.
Pump gas and methanol. And it's a dead simple combo. It's like a turbo cam, L33, 4L80E.
They don't come with a 4L80?
No.
What do they come with, a 60?
If you buy a 2500 Tahoe or Suburban, you get the 80E because it has the 8 lug and the 80E, but everything comes with a fucking 60.
I thought the half tons came with an 82.
Yes, there's like weird stuff because I had a 2500 LD, and that's when I learned about weird shit. Because I had a light duty 2500. It was a little bit lighter, but it still had a decent rear end and an 80E, but it didn't have like a torsion bar front end or any of that.
Oh yeah, that is weird.
It is. It was weird.
What does the Interceptor come with?
For what? The Tahoe Interceptor?
Yeah.
I have no idea. Almost all of those larger. That's why I tell people go right to a 2500 Silverado because you're 90% guaranteed to get an 80E.
And the 60's a piece of crap.
Yeah.
Well, it's good for what it does, but adding a lot of power, it's expensive to build. And the funny thing is a $100 4L80E with a $100 shift kit is in what's all of my builds that make 8 to 1,000 horsepower, completely issue free. So it's hard to argue. People are like, it's heavy. I'm like, it doesn't fucking break. What is the deal? Like, who gives a shit? If it's heavy, add 150 extra horsepower with some boost.
Yeah. Turn that knob.
Yeah.
Now the trucks, what do they have for a rear in the half-ton trucks?
It's all over someone who's like way into trucks would know better than me.
Yeah.
But it's like the 12 bolt, 14 bolt, full floater, half floater.
Yeah.
There's so many because when I bought mine, I'm like, yeah, but it didn't have the heavy duty because the heavy duty rear, you can pull the axle out.
Yeah. It's
without taking the wheel off.
Yeah. It's a floated axle.
You can see it's the floater. Mine didn't have a floater. And what's funny is that truck, I never put a good tire on it, but I went 1183 at 122 with a regular street radial tire at Maple Grove.
Wow.
On like a 180, 160 foot.
I'm looking up Tahoes right now.
Yeah.
No, that's hilarious. Sick. So in the stock computer range, like we had talked about this before, when do you hit the limitation where you got to be like, all right, look, enough's enough? Like,
you can hit it pretty quickly with like the meter, the mass air meter. But then again, like if you're going to do a turbo build, I think it's easy to just go right to speed density because then the fueling is based off of the pressure amount instead of the airflow amount. Then the stock computer, depending on the year, make, model, has incoming airflow cap amount. Like it was only designed, like I always say, like the physics engine inside the computer was only designed to flow like say 64 pounds a minute. So when you start hitting that, you can do funny things like change the injector size, and that changes the airflow limit. And then you can make more, but you're going to hit a limit where the meter hits like, it has a range of like, it's a frequency based. It has 11,000 hertz or 14,000 hertz. you're going to start pinning the meter. And then you're going to have to put the meter in a giant tube and do a drop in. People make good
trying to rescale it,
People
right?
make a ton of power with blower cars and like an LS7 drop in MAF and like a 4-inch tube. But I think there's a lot of messing around with that. Some of them seem to work really well. And then, I don't know. I think there's a lot of prodding with that. If you just go speed density, boom.
Well, the earlier Ford guys used to do that because the early,
thing.
yeah, they had like a sample tube.
Correct.
And you'd change the tube, and it would change the amount of air that actually, like it was
meters,
yeah, it was trying to figure out
You're
how much
scaling
air
the
is
meter.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you start to, but the problem is your resolution goes to shit usually when you start scaling it to run like 1,000 horsepower.
Yeah.
So when you're driving around with 50, it's junk.
Yeah, drives not like a nice
Yeah.
car anymore. Now, what about when you switch over to speed density?
A PO1, like a fairly popular one to get, is the one that can do 3-bar speed density, which the fuel table has a cap of 28, 30 PSI, 3-bar.
Mhm.
Because the 3-bar, a lot of people argue immediately when I say 3-bar, because 3-bar is technically 40.
Yeah, it depends if
PSI.
you're talking about absolute or you're talking about differential.
But then
yeah.
I have to tell people on an automotive computer, 3-bar, 1 bar is vacuum because the engine runs in vacuum. So it's 2 bars of boost, it's 1 bar of vacuum. So a 3-bar OS can read 28 to 30 some PSI. So you have a fueling calculation for approximately 30 PSI. You can run a little bit off the reservation, but your final fuel amount is going to be at 310 kPa.
Stops at your highest
So you can,
value.
I mean, if it comes up hard enough, you can probably make 40 pounds of boost. It would be a little fat on its way, and it would clear that hump, and then it would be okay. But yeah, there starts to be, but then usually by the time someone's running that kind of boost, making that kind of power, they kind of want the comfort features of the standalone, which is the good closed loop fuel, boost cut protection, oil pressure, fuel
Yeah, I
pressure,
would imagine that
compensation.
if you were trying to do that, where you were trying to make much more power, like say you were into 40 pounds of boost.
Yeah.
The other drawback to that is if you wanted to cut it back from 40 to 38, there's nothing that tells the computer reduce my
Exactly,
fueling, because
yeah.
when you're at that, so you're really
You're running out of resolution again.
yeah, you have to go above or way below to be in a table that you programmed.
But if you have like a big ass motor and big turbos, you make so much power on a low amount of boost. You could feasibly have like an easy 1,500 horsepower car on stock computer, and people tune stuff like that all the time.
Yeah, so it's more about what the computer can interpret.
Yes.
And the parameters of the motor. Yeah,
Yeah.
I understand. Okay.
It's very capable. It can do all of that. It's just that at that point, people are kind of not interested in the budget. Because
Yeah.
I've done a bunch of like 900,000 horsepower stock computer cars. Like it's doable, and some people like it that way, and then other people are like, well, I kind of just want a Holly.
Yeah.
So it depends. But you cannot beat the price point of if you bought a $650 engine with accessories, with wiring harness, with ECU, and you rewired it yourself in an afternoon, and you hooked up a $20 ECU or you got it for free and your friend has HP tuners, and you load in like one of my bass tunes, even if you don't have a lot of knowledge and you have all of the mechanics and the size injector that's close, it starts and runs and drives and shifts the 4L80E.
You're off to the races.
Yeah, it's like
Literally.
Yeah, that's why I tell people like that's why the latest build for my Colorado, like it was getting extreme, and part of me really really enjoys the budget build, so I took everything out and redid it as a complete budget. And I was like, here, like I'm just gonna show you guys. Like I always tell you this, so I'm just gonna. I mean, I've done it a bunch of times, but I'm gonna do it with the intention of showing you that I'm gonna do it, and it's gonna be a 500 horsepower goal. And bam, like I laid it out, and I had no idea how to do the flex fuel stuff. I learned that on my way while doing this, and posted all of the results and bass tunes for that too.
And
There's
they're
a lot of free information.
They're loving his voice. Everybody's like, "Ooh, his voice is so soothing."
When I do, it's so funny lately. I do a bunch of voiceovers. I figure it's easier than posting the text. I started this is a nice mic too. It's probably the nicest one I've used, so that's why people are probably saying that even more. But I have
Here at Power and Speed, we try to do things right.
That's right.
But people are, I didn't know what it meant, actually. I had to look it up. People keep writing, you should do ASMR videos or whatever, but it's that audio stimulatory, I don't know, something like that. Where
You got me.
it's like a relaxation thing, like, you're walking through the woods. It's that they're like, you should do ASMR tapes.
Definitely was a different direction than I was.
Yeah,
thinking.
me too.
And I'm like, okay, you are weirding me out. I appreciate those sentiments, but that's creepy.
Yeah, that is a little creepy. All right, moving on.
So let's in the stock computers, let's talk about the flex fuel stuff. What what have you seen? Like, and I mean, this is probably a very basic question, but just so people understand, if you went from a conventional pump fuel to a flex fuel, what's the benefit? What does it let you do?
Okay.
Like how much change could you expect going to flex fuel
Well,
and 85?
I recently did like both things. So interestingly enough, I feel like pump gas recently has been taking a decline. Like it did before a couple of years ago. I think in the last year to 6 months, it's been getting even worse. Like 93 is actually 91 because I tune a bunch of cars a year, and I feel like the pump gas capability has been going downhill on a lot of simple combinations. And that's where ethanol on like a gasoline scale equates to like 101 or 105-ish octane. If that's what you guys have heard. And then lately in the area, ethanol was extremely expensive because people constantly on my YouTube videos are like E85, E85. And I'm like, one place sells it and it's $4.20 a gallon. No.
Oh, so you're actually driving demand.
Yeah, I'm like no. And then now it's been getting cheaper, and to the point where the new Palmer Mall sheets opened up on 248. It was under $2 a gallon there, but since the hurricane, it's extremely expensive now at $2.40 a gallon. It's still cheaper than regular most places. And just recently, we did a pump gas car with my friend's 69 C10 with like the plaid fenders and everything. He does like beautiful work, and it has a 6-liter, a high-rise intake of like a 3/4 cam, like almost wild, but not piston valve clearance issues or anything like that. He didn't have to.
He said 3/4 cam.
He did
3/4 race cam.
But
That's a joke.
I know.
It's hidden in there for everybody. There's no camel humps though, but it does have a giant.
It could have had them though.
It could have. But it's interesting because that made like I had it on my other friend's dyno, but it made 401 on pump gas, and it peaked out power at like 6,600 RPM, and I thought it would do a little bit more RPM than that with the cam and the giant intake manifold and 102 millimeter throttle, and we put it on ethanol, and it took an additional 6 degrees of timing throughout the rev range. It went from 28 up top at like 6,600 to I put 34 in it, and it peaked out power at 7,350 instead of 6,600, and it gained an additional 33 rear wheel through most of the power band and peak. So I was like, wow, on a motor car on a loaded dyno to the tire, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And that was an LS that could actually utilize 34 degrees of lead.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was impressed too. That's a lot of ignition, but it's a good fuel. And that was my first test on good fuel with an all motor car because my buddy wanted to do that. I'm like, I'm really interested in seeing what this result, because he eventually planned it on doing a turbo. So he put 80-pound injectors in it right away. So when we made all that power on gas, and I'm like, you're only using like 40% of your injector. Let's put E in because we need like 38% overhead to put ethanol in usually. So I'm like, we could easily just jump right to the 70% utilization on E, and you'd be ready to go. And then that's what we did for his. We just drained it and redid all the fueling. So I have 2 different flashes. I burned 2 different ECUs. So that's when I'm like, I should put a flex sensor on this, and I should do the investigation. And that's the same time when I was rebuilding my Colorado. So I just implemented all those changes on that. And I've done some cars throughout the year. One of them stands out in my head. A guy, his name's Mike, and he lives in Philly, and he has a C5, and it has like a giant A&A kit blower on it. And on pump, I made like 599 tire, and on E, I was able to make 788.
Wow.
Well, I imagine that certain things are probably more conducive.
Yeah, especially forced induction cars.
Yeah.
Huge.
And probably especially things forced induction cars that really probably have too much static to begin with.
Yes.
So you're trying to, instead of the Band-Aid,
there's just a huge diminishing gain. Like it took almost no ignition on gasoline and showed no sign of wanting any more. And as soon as you put it on E, I could just start piling it in, and it was like, I was making like 38 rear wheel per degree.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's the change.
Yeah.
It still sounds like a lot though. Almost like you had really bad pump fuel to start.
Well, that goes along the lines where it seems like
it seems
like 93
shittier,
is 91 or 89 eventually now.
Because you got to admit that's a huge change.
It does. It looks weird to me, but that's one of the cars that did really good though.
Yeah.
But that was a high static compression ratio blower car.
And if you throw 91 at it, then it all falls into place.
Oh yeah. That's the thing that I saw was, because I even prepped him. I'm like, It's not going to be a huge difference. Don't get your hopes up. And then I crammed out like
Then you're
almost
like
200
hero.
rear wheel. I'm like, oh, we found 188 rear wheel.
Sorry.
Whoops.
Yeah.
See, that's a discussion that we had with Kenny Duttweiler.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
talked about static compression
yeah.
versus where you should be kind of to start with. And, you know, the 1 point of compression is worth much less than the couple degrees of timing. So, you know, that's he was of the opinion, and I tend to agree with him. And
Yep.
we did the motor for the Corvette is like, what is it, 9.2?
Yeah.
9.3, something like that.
9 something.
And Jeff just got his thing running. We should talk about that too. And I could actually ask him a few questions because he probably knows right off the bat where you should be.
Yep.
But let's talk on the flex fuel side. You might have said it before, and I might have missed it because I was reading and thinking and talking at the same time. Are there any computers that the flex fuel sensor is not compatible with? Like if you're going to try to do this, like
A lot of them.
Okay.
Well, the operating system is the most the biggest problem.
Okay.
If you have, say, like you bought that 2003 Tahoe
Mhm.
and you wanted to do Flex, and you had to load an operating system from a different car with the Flex enabled. Now, Tahoe is like a bad thing because a lot of the Tahoes were Flex for no reason. They made a lot of the 02, 03 Tahoes Flex. That's one of the most popular base operating systems for Flex fuel and HP tuners. But say you had a Silverado and you needed to put the Tahoe OS on to make it flex fuel compatible. Well, now you just changed your model, make, and VIN. And if
Right.
you have a street legal car that needs to be inspected, scanned, OBD2'd, Jersey or PA, they're like, why is this isn't a Tahoe? Is you actually have an 03 Silverado. So that's where that difficulty can come in. But almost all the Gen 4s, I think it's fairly easy to do. I want to do a Gen 4 soon. A friend of mine has a G8, and we just want to turn it on and plug in a sensor and see what it does. But anybody can take like a swap car with like a P01 or a P59 and flash a flex fuel OS. It starts to get, I made a long video on it. It says like convoluted Rambletron there. And I drew like a giant flow chart. And I'm like, this ECU and this ECU can do it. If you have this operating system, and then I said it gets even more complex. If you don't have that, you can take files from a car, use HP tuners, swap in the flex fuel segment, put the 4L80E segment. And then after all of that, I'm like, I did all this for you. I have working OSs for P01, P59. They're up on my website to download.
Oh, so even the earlier computers, you could make this work.
Yes.
Really?
A 99 Silverado can have flex. You
Okay.
just buy, I tell a lot of people, because you can get them on eBay, but it seems like lately the eBay sensors are not that great. Pace Performance sells the harness for like $11 and a sensor for like $52. So it's like less than $75 shipped for a flex sensor. You can have a 99 Silverado, wire the flex sensor in, put a huge injector in, and make 800 rear wheel with the truck in a weekend.
He's throwing money away, though.
What do you mean?
Well, he
Giving it away?
He figured out all those maps with flow charts and lights and whistles and rockets.
It's not how I make money, so I'm not keen. I like sharing and seeing other people do it. So, because hot rodding to me, when I learned about it, was a giant secretive thing. So that's where like I'm.
Yeah, no, it's cool.
My enjoyment is giving it to people.
It's cool what you're doing. It
Yeah.
is. You're throwing money away.
Oh, we had people asking, what do you think of a CSU blow through carb? I was like, I really don't think he's touched that.
I'm not a huge fan of
Yeah.
blow through carburetors. No, because the weather changes and your tune changes.
Yeah.
And everybody tells me I'm wrong, and a good carb isn't like that. And they start their shit and it backfires a fireball every time they tell me. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. And I'll floor it on the dyno from like 2000 and it bogs. And you can't floor it. You can't floor it at $2 grand.
Then it's not fine.
Well, what the fuck? You said it was fine.
Yeah, it's there.
They were only kidding.
There's too much shit going on there with
Yeah.
carburetors to the
Some
way
of
that
them
they
work. Some of those guys go fast. Sure. Yep. But no.
Well,
I
they
don't
work
think
in race cars because you can get them to that you could come
Nothing
up on the
else
converter
matters.
and wide open throttle.
Yeah.
That can work.
But then those guys that say carbs work, literally one of my friends, a friend of mine that just went to the 210-pound budget injector and a stock computer and flex fuel has a 3rd gen Camaro with a 408 in it, an 88 millimeter turbo and a TKO, and it makes 900 rear wheel on a stock computer on 15 pounds. He was blow through carbureted and for years had nothing but issues and said the blow through carb was fine, the blow through carb is great. And then unfortunately he had an issue with the car and it broke down on the highway, like some fuel pump related. I can't remember exactly. Someone rear-ended his car and destroyed it. So when he swapped it all into another 3rd gen, he decided to go injection because I just harped on him all the time. He's like, you think you're so fucking right. Here, I'll do it. You help me out. You tune it. And he's been, he's all about it. 'Cause he reaches in there and goes dink, and it goes blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it
blah.
just starts.
Yeah, cold, hot, doesn't matter. And then he floors it. It's always good. So,
Everything works.
Yeah. There's
Okay. How about do you want to talk? I mean, I know you've covered this. See, for you, this shit is stuff that like you've written about a million times. You probably get the same questions a million times. Do you want to talk about transmissions? Do you want to talk about what motors are good starting motors?
Can I interrupt? Because I got a question specific to a listener.
Okay.
That I want to ask. A buddy of mine has a 99 Corvette.
Okay.
And he wants to he's putting a 416 in it. And I told him just this past weekend, I was in Florida, he's got a 67 Nova. He wants to put an LS in. I said, why don't you just use
Just be clear, this isn't me.
It's not Mike. I said, why don't you just put the 5.7 as it is out of the Corvette into your Nova?
Oh, yeah.
He's got a 76 millimeter bullseye, a real bullseye.
Or sell that and buy a more stout 5.3, depending on your horsepower goals and stuff. Yeah,
well, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
And the 5.3s are more stout. I understand.
Well, the LS1 has the skinnier rods. So if he buys like a 05 5.3, his horsepower capability is like double.
So what would his capability be?
With the LS1?
Yeah.
People generally, I think, start to break them over 650 tire.
Okay.
I would, if it was through like a TH400 unlocked, I wouldn't want to press much more in the mid 500s or high 500s through the auto. Because after that, it seems like reliability is coin toss.
So he would sell that thing because it gives everybody a boner to have one of them,
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
And
People will spend big money on it.
And buy a late model 5.3.
Yeah, it depends too. 'Cause some people in their area, they have difficulty doing that. Because I say it's easy to do because I'm used to it being easy. Like in this area, people with a drift car or something, they want it to be light. They want an aluminum motor. They want a real LS1. They will spend more money, and then you can get it cheaper. And then you would use that money to cultivate other parts at no cost out of pocket.
Right.
Some people are completely uninterested in that thought process and don't understand why I say that at all. So it depends on.
Well,
the person.
no, it makes perfect sense. I was more curious to how much power he could put down with that thing.
Yeah, the LS1 has the skinnier rods, but
So if you got it actually narrowed down to this particular rod seems to fail here.
no, it's a coin toss. It depends on your vehicle weight, where your converter grabs, how fast the car is, and then all of them at once. If it makes a ton of power down low, it's not a good situation for a skinnier rod. Some people have success with making a ton of power on a skinnier rodded motor and say that that's not a real concern. But a lot of those guys are making, like, they have a twin turbo car that makes like 8 and change. It's all like ton of power over 5,000. Again, I think it's because it's not loading the rod as hard.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of more of that to be learned than meets the eye. I just, over the years, people leaning on the Gen 3 motor have windowed more than people with the stronger rod, in my opinion.
Okay. That's good info.
Aaron down in Australia is asking, at what point does the aluminum block become a problem point?
Yeah,
Because
that's
he said
actually a good point.
They don't have the iron blocks down there. They have the aluminum blocks in Australia.
That I don't push many aluminum motors. I know some people that some of them are real. Like, here's the thing: we go back to like the L33, the factory race motor.
Yep.
The L33, I think people have, especially if you look at an LS1 from the top and a L33 from the top, the meat in between the cylinder bore spacing, huge difference. It's like double. So there's, I believe there's better, block rigidity and whatever else. L33 is also like it's more of a Gen 4 design because it's just in general, I just think it's a better block. I don't know all of the specifics.
Well, wait a minute.
But
Time out.
I think people make way more power with the L33 than they do the LS1.
What did the L33 come in?
It came in like specialized GMC and Silverados. Like, you could buy it as a high output aluminum motor that they would sell in like Silverados and Sierras.
What do you know? What bore size it is?
Yeah, they're 3.7 something, aren't they?
378.
Okay.
It's the same as the other 5.3s, but the block architecture is different. It's got better spacing than like.
Well, it can't have better spacing. The spacing is the spacing.
Well, probably the way it looks is because if it's an aluminum block, it has liners.
Yeah, it has much bigger liners.
So the
Probably
liner,
a thicker liner.
I mean, an LS1 is a 390,
Mhm.
but I feel like people have way better luck with high horsepower with like an L33, and it may just be because they're smarter and they don't blow up their LS1 Corvette. Who
no,
knows?
it could be a thicker liner. It could be something.
Well, I mean, there's got to be
Yeah.
more support material
Yeah.
in a smaller bore.
If you look at the picture, it almost looks fake because of the difference in material with the sleeve
Between them,
versus, So a lot of people say that adds to the rigidity of the block because
sure it
the
does.
liner is double the size and it's taking up the meat on the whole top of the deck.
Well, weren't the LS1s, wasn't it you, one of the years, I think it was that one that I have, I think the 2001, eats oil like mad. And there was a problem with them that like they did some kind of process for the liners and they didn't work well. So, something was wrong with them. But from what I understand, the liners in those things, and the LSs particularly, are very thin. That they're very thin. That there's nothing, that there's not a lot of, it's not like a liner like a Darton or anything like that. So probably the 5.3 with all the additional support material on the backside, that probably helps it. But what I've always heard is these things splitting up, like splitting the block.
Yeah.
Like from the main journal upward.
I've heard obviously there's the aluminum isn't as strong, but at the same time, I don't know what that guy's goals are, but I know people personally making over 1,000 through an auto with an L33 aluminum.
So but with the 5.3, with the L33.
Yeah, but they're in Australia, so a lot of theirs are the car actual LS style motor. So a lot of them are all like 6-liter LS1, LS2, LS3 based motors. So the L33 probably doesn't exist in Australia.
Yeah. All right.
That and there's one of your favorite listeners asked if you'd done any Mopars, any Gen 3 Hemi stuff.
I don't tune most of the time. I don't tune them because of how you would tune them through like the OBD2.
Right.
I don't have the support in the back end and all that.
Who asked that question?
But I have tuned.
That could have.
I have tuned Hemi stuff with standalones.
All right.
Okay.
So they're very similar to like an LS motor. They don't take a whole lot of ignition and whatever else. I've done like at Barton's, I did a blown Hemi. I have a YouTube video of it, but it has like a Whipple on it, and it's like a Gen 3 Hemi, and it made like 740 on pump fuel.
Okay.
Not bad.
All right. Well, I think anybody that wants to know about which motors are which and why, go to his web resource because everything is there.
Yeah, there's like on the sloppy. If you go to sloppymechanics.com and you follow a link, it says the wiki page. There's an article in there that says Guide to Junkyard Engines, Junkyard LS.
Yeah.
And it highlights like basically the summary of that is getting the most complete engine for your money is always the best if you have no idea what the hell you want to do.
That's why I bought that for what I wanted. I bought an LY6.
Yeah.
So it has a variable cam timing, all that shit. You can just throw all that shit away.
Yeah.
But I wanted square port heads.
Exactly.
I wanted a 6-liter case.
Why did you want square port heads?
Because I'm stupid.
Yeah. You idiot.
Gonna lose 200 horsepower.
But I feel like sometimes people, when they want an LS swap, they will waste all of their time and money buying a 6-liter, which is like a short block.
Mm-hmm.
Then they don't have a fucking oil pan. They don't have heads. They don't have an intake. They don't have injectors. They're missing all of it.
All the
and
value.
Then they have to part all of that out.
Yep.
Then they have to find a harness. And I'm like, some asshole next to that asshole was selling a 5.3 complete accessories, oil intake to oil pan with the motor mounts, with the manifolds.
Yeah, whatever
with the
they left
intake.
on it when they yanked it out.
And they a lot of those guys disconnect the wiring harness beautifully. It's all useful. You can get it rewired. You can rewire yourself. That was $650, and a destroyed 6-liter short block with no oil pressure was $650. And look, you had a boner for a 6.0, so that's what you did. And look where you are. You're not complete, and the engine sucks. And
once you throw turbos at it, they don't make that
doesn't
much
matter
more.
anyway. Yeah, that's why I did, because I had the 6-liter and the billet 80 and everything else. And then for my truck, I did in like a 02, 03, 48. And like a lot of bullshit stuff, I decap injectors, and like a lot of it's all almost worthless that people would throw out. And it's out of fuel, but it makes 660, and I'm sure it's capable of more, but it's safely capable of 540 rear wheel like all day long on ethanol.
All right, we have a really good friend in the injector business, so you can't talk about decapping.
Well, he brought it up.
Yeah, he did.
Paul Yar brought it up. He's like, we were talking about atomization, and he's like, if that shouldn't work. He's like, but it works.
Yeah.
I listened to the one show where the guy said, once all the fuel and air is in the cylinder and it's dancing around and the piston is crushing it anyway, it doesn't fucking matter what the spray pattern
That
looks
could have been
like.
Paul or Banish.
Yeah.
I don't remember which one it was, because Banish, I think, is the one.
Might have been Banish.
Isn't Banish the one that told that? Because I was always under the impression that the direct injection, because you could specifically time when the fuel went in, gave you the ability to tolerate more timing. But it was really that the fuel was going in and cooling the charge in the cylinder.
Yep.
And I thought that was amazing. So I think it was probably Manish.
I like the DI argument because I have a Kia Soul and it pings balls. And I'm like, yeah, can't ping, no fuel, won't ping. It rattles its face going
Well,
up a hill.
I think when we talked to Banish, I think we figured out that the fuel goes in at essentially the same time.
Yeah.
That like the injector timing really didn't change. I was
and
kind
all
of
you're
surprised.
doing is getting more EGR in your intake and gumming the motor up
Yeah.
faster.
Yeah.
Because it really
That's the
can't
big
go
one.
in at a different time. I mean, within microseconds.
Good
right?
job, emissions.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it,
Well,
if you're,
especially at a higher RPM, your
Yeah.
window gets smaller. You have to be injecting while
Right.
Yeah,
It's basically static open anyway, right?
yeah. Well, a lot of high performance C7 Corvettes have aftermarket multi-port injection system piggybacked on because the DI simply sucks balls.
was it, who was it that was just talking about it? Was it Duttweiler or somebody that said that the new Ford stuff is going to have both?
Yes.
Yeah.
I heard
Yeah.
about that too.
Yeah.
You guys said there's stuff about transmissions. It just popped into my head. What was there?
Well, yeah, let's talk about from the perspective of economical transmissions.
I mean, again, one of those things is like whatever you can get your hands on.
I got to interrupt one more thing too, because I'm looking
Yeah.
at an LS block versus an L33 block, and the LS was more of an open deck concept.
okay.
There's
So-
more water jacket, right?
Yeah, way more water.
Yeah,
yeah,
It's like if you look at an aftermarket Honda motor
Yeah.
and a regular Honda motor.
It
when you
looks
look at
like a
that,
race motor.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why we say factory race because there's so much more meat in the deck.
Yep.
It's insane because that's what happens on some of the other alloy blocks is they crack. The sleeves will shift and
Yep.
you'll drop a sleeve or you'll rattle a sleeve or you'll move the sleeve enough that it'll crack the outside layer of the block. All sorts of weird shit.
And they may have a little more sleeve in them because some of the OEs have been getting a little bigger anyway. But anyway,
The transmission thing, I really like the ADE because I like using stock computer. And then once you have like an overdrive lockup transmission, and what's funny is I feel like the ADE you can get cheaper than a lot of stuff. But obviously it's more expensive to do like a trans brake or something like that. And sometimes you can fall into a good converter and transmission combination for like $1,200. I've done it a bunch of times. And you have a trans brake TH400 with a converter. Debatable whether or not that's going to be good with a turbo because a lot of people have like a Jegs nitrous converter, which is usually awful for a ton of power with a turbo car. You're just eating limiter all day long. You make 800, but then you can only trap 130 with a 28-inch tire. Yeah, so that all moves around. But if you're going to race the car, obviously like a 400 is great. If you have a race car and it has a carbureted small block in it and it has a good TH400, you can just put an LS in, it'll bolt up. You can keep it. If you're building something from scratch, a lot of times I feel like the ADE is cheap. It's like a couple $100, and then the HD2 kit. The other aspect of that is the ADE converter is more expensive if you want like a triple disc lockup. It's big time. It's like
Yeah, well,
$1,200.
there's actually a really good question. What can the factory torque converter from the lockup perspective handle?
We've made tons of power with the stock converter, but the issue is you can't launch anywhere with it. Like you start to run into issues with, like you just can't get the car to leave. We've done plenty of stock.
it won't flash. Like
You can't. It doesn't work as well as just even like a budget Circle D or like a $400 converter that holds good turbo power.
Well, what do? Do they run through it, or do they
No, it holds well. It's just that when people go to the track and they run like a 13.1 at 135,
Yeah, there's just
too
no
tight.
energy.
they get
there.
annoyed.
Yeah.
They're like, fucking car's slow.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you had a $450 converter that would cut even a 1.6 instead of a 2.24, you would go much faster, believe me. And they're like, oh no, this is all junk.
All right, so if you got nothing, a 4L ADE is a nice place to start
Yeah,
with.
you can just do the totally stock ADE with the stock converter, and yeah, it's great.
And you had said earlier before we were on that you thought there was a point that like where the input shaft would become a problem.
Yeah, I haven't run into it, but my buddy that builds those transmissions that I believe would have no reason to say anything. About 1,000 horsepower in like the mid 3,000 range. Obviously, if you have a trans brake car, it leaves super hard off the foot brake. You're at obviously the heavier it is and the harder it leaves, you're presenting yourself an opportunity with braking the input.
Sure.
And then they say also that if you're pouring in power as you go in high gear at high horsepower. But what's funny is like my truck trapped 143 and I was locking it at 135. But my converter was working so good that it only dropped like 150 RPM.
Oh, wow.
So if you consider if you had a really shit converter and it would dropped it 1,000 Rs and it locked it hard enough, you're snapping it pretty hard at 800 plus.
Yeah, it's a
rear wheel.
deceleration load against
you're
everything.
You're
Yeah.
knocking at 1,000 Rs through the input when you lock the. But you can set up the apply for the lockup to apply slower. There's a lot of that stuff, but that's what people tell me is right around 1,000, depending on weight and how hard it leaves, is where the stock input breaks. But if you've ever tried to picked up an 80E, you can understand why it handles so much power relatively easy, because the fucking thing's 300 pounds.
Yeah, they're substantial.
What converter do you have?
I go between a lot of them depending on your goal. Right now, I bought a used PTC single billet, which works amazing for this combo.
That's what everybody's talking about here.
It was too loose with a 6-liter and a medium-sized turbo. It would blow through at approximately 700 horsepower. Is really struggling. But with the 4.8, with a little bit less cubic inches, a little bit less torque, it's doing much better. It's actually perfect, I think, for the horsepower range it has. You can foot brake it to almost 4,000, so it's probably going to leave like son of a bitch, or even to the point of where it's spinning, which is what most people can't even get to. Yep. A lot of times when I like, depending on what you're going to buy, like if you have a TH400 car and you want to go 8s as your goal, PTC sells a converter for like $450. It's $500 now shipped, I think, because it's $50 additional shipping. You can go 8s with that converter for $500. It's extreme awesome, but they don't really, in my opinion, make a great 80E converter. I tried a few, but not enough. But I like Circle D. The issue with Circle D is I feel like they have a lot of shelf converters, and they make them too tight. So if you have a truck and you want it to launch good, they're gonna send you like a 2500.
Got it.
And you're gonna be like, I can't fucking make this thing leave. Like I make good boost at 4K. I want to leave at 3500. You're foot braking the shit out of it. We have ways of getting around that too that we figured out.
That's right.
But we had an issue where like you can force the transmission into third. You get more mechanical advantage. You can get a little bit more stall speed. When you let the button go, it goes back into first and will launch. So that's like a neat way to get a street car with a tighter converter. Because obviously a looser converter is just going to generate a lot of heat and be funny for a street.
Yeah.
And then...
Well, go ahead.
I like Jake's too. Recently, my friend that does the transmission stuff got into a dealer account with Jake's, and they built me an awesome triple disc lockup. And like I was saying, that easily cut a 1.560 foot. I didn't try harder because it was a Friday night, and I thought I might spin and throw away my pass. And with the absence of safety equipment in my vehicle, I usually only get one, so I didn't want to spin. So I left medium, and it cut like a 158. And like I said, it was coupling so well up top with 800 horsepower, 3850 race weight that when I locked it at 135, it dropped 150 RPM. So it was almost negligible for lockup.
Yeah, for lockup, yeah.
Only
absolutely.
Lockup's only really good for, I think, dynoing also, because when you hit a car in the dyno in third gear, at least with mine, with the inertia dyno, like the converter wants to flash up high because you're in high gear at like 50 miles an hour or 75. And then it has to catch all the power, all the load, so you'll always see more loss, technically. So locking it early and forcing it through the whole pull instead of swinging through the R's, that's good. But
that's got to put some load on it, though.
Yeah, and then some cars, I think, like if you have a big truck, like a 5,000-pound truck, and you want to be able to foot brake like 4,600. If you have a 4.8 turbo truck, you want to be able to get some serious RPM for the launch. And then up top, obviously with it being that loose, won't couple that great up top. So then you can lock it up top. So that's like a good comparison between that too. So like Jake's, PTC, Circle D, I think make good converters all in their own respects, depending on how you order it. Because if you threaten Chris at Circle D, like make it loose, or like it's a race, you tell them it's race only, because they're going to give you like a 2,500 and you're going to be like, fuck, I wasted my money.
Right.
You're going to feel like it's not any good.
All right. So basically a salvage yard for a lady shift kit and a decent converter. Yeah. And you're in business.
Yeah, I literally have a used PTC $400 single billet, and it's great for, at least what it was spec'd for was my friend's 3800 supercharged rear-wheel drive swapped Volvo.
Yeah, I saw that.
So I bought that. I bought that from him and put it in my turbo 4.8.
What's with the Volvos?
People love Volvos.
We saw one there. He's got a friend. There was one at the race I was at in Florida this weekend.
I know.
I just did one recently. My friend in Maryland put together and made 756 tire on pump gas.
The owner of AMS is building an LS swapped Volvo. His guy's got the fastest GTR on Earth.
He's building a Volvo.
All I know is that most people that I'm behind Volvos are terrible drivers. They're going like 30. They're oblivious, or they're like 150.
They're boxy but safe.
Oh, it's the safest car you can have. So
that's good, because the people driving are the worst on the road.
You want to see?
Well, we got a caller here.
Yeah.
Let's see what this guy wants. Guy from Florida.
Hey, this is Jason Andre, also known as Stupid Performance, probably on Matt's YouTube videos.
Oh, yeah. With the O's, right? STOOPID?
Yeah.
Yes.
Name back from when I used to be an SCT dealer. I'm curious. I know that you seem like an intelligent guy that likes to mess around with stuff that makes you think and disprove things. If you're getting bored with the LS stuff, because I feel like you've kind of disproved and proved everything that you can with that, what's in your future? What else would you like to play with? Because I'm kind of like you, like playing with different stuff and doing it on the cheap, but doing it right and disproving fellas. Have you considered like 2JZ stuff, but doing it on the cheap, or maybe something electric? What interests you other than the LS?
Electric.
I like electric vehicles, and I like Fords too. But in my experience, the motors are more expensive, and the tuning them is harder. I did a few Coyotes this year on Holly EFI, and I have seriously pushed on those people. I'm like, get a turbo, get this, get that, do this cheap shit. But they're all the do it right the first time, and their transmission breaks every time, or stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I would love to see like maybe one day like just start to get into some of the Ford stuff. It would be neat to do a Coyote and then there is a lot. I think there's a lot of funny stuff with that where people are like, this Ford transmission sucks. But then I know people with like a 4R70W that have like a mid 9-second Cobra with no issues.
Yep.
None. And then people are like, that transmission's junk. I know the newer 6-speed auto Ford is really good. The stock computer tuning to me on the Ford stuff is super difficult because I just haven't done a lot of it also. But a lot of it's like driver demand torque tables in foot-pounds, and that number also actuates the throttle body a certain amount.
Yep.
It's a lot to learn, whereas like if I
the
threw
factory's more powerful. I messed around with back in the, and believe it or not, a lot, but it's just a pass and it's it easy. Just curious, man. A lot of stuff. Just was bored with it.
That's gonna be tough.
Losing it.
you're cutting out a lot of
Yeah, I punted him.
We're
I'm becoming more of the radio guy that's just going to be
yeah,
like,
you
all right, man,
got
your phone
to.
sucks. See ya."
You got to.
we only heard like 20% of that.
Yeah.
I don't know if everyone else could probably hear it that way too, right?
Yeah, they heard it that way.
they heard that way.
The Ford
Yeah.
stuff is different. I would love to do like if someone wants to bring me a Holly EFI Coyote turbo car.
Yeah, but you got to be careful with those things because, like, if you turn your back on them, they're going to drive over you. I mean,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah, the crowd
that's for you,
control
Nathan.
feature instead of traction control. But yeah, I I love electric vehicles. A lot of people think that like I'm all for like gas only, but I think electric stuff is really cool. Like I'd love to own a Tesla or
The electric stuff, when the batteries get good, when they can get
They're only
charged
gonna
quickly.
get better, yeah.
I mean, if you think about that, you can't, anything we're doing with an engine, we're taking a mechanical action and trying to change the action. I mean, you've got the time involved.
Yeah.
When you've got an electric motor coupled to the wheel, it's instant.
That's it.
So like the traction control side and management side is just, the possibility is phenomenal.
Yeah. I think that stuff's cool also because some people are like, they drive around a sticker that's like, my miles per gallon, fuck your Prius, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm like, well, the nice thing about that is if people drive, like I have an economical vehicle for a daily driver too. And I feel like doing stuff like that will ensure longevity of internal combustion engines and stuff like that for fun. Saying fuck you to all those people will, you'll be out of luck when gas is too expensive for you to run or something like that. I think there's a good medium, and I think there's cool stuff to do with that. Actually, there's a page on, they're kind of make me cringe a lot, Speed Academy on YouTube.
Yeah.
There's Canadian dudes. They do some really awesome stuff and some totally like I can't watch it anymore stuff. But one thing, they visit a lot of very talented people, and there's one guy that put a Tesla, like a single motor, to do a rear wheel drive in a Lotus Elise.
Really?
And he works with Motec and someone else to generate the motor controls for the Tesla motor and run a dash. And they actually were driving it on the track the other day. Like they completed it and it's running and driving.
I'll have to go look at that.
It makes like 400 some horsepower, 480, I think. I'd have to look, but yeah, instantaneous torque.
Yeah.
And he said he completely had to relearn how to drive. Like he's actually a really talented dyno tuner and driver, and he like spun it out on the road course a few times. He said because there's no fucking sound.
Yeah.
He's like, there's nothing. You don't know how fast you're going. There's no engine noise to let you know you're accelerating. You just roll into it and spin out. And he said it seems like it doesn't make that much power, but they had to do a lot of like buffering, like fading the power in with the controls, because he would stomp the pedal and it would have so much. You weren't waiting for the engine to deliver power.
Just
It
boom.
delivered power when you put the foot down.
Isn't it crazy?
He's like, I had to he's like, it was easy to make the motor work. It's so hard to make it like control the pulse width or the amount of power, the pedal feel, and everything else. And then they have paddle shifters on the Lotus, which aren't in use anymore. There's no gears. But what he has is it does the regenerative braking. So one's like hard and one's really hard. So he barely has to touch the brakes. He can hit the one and slow down medium and hit the other. And because they were turning on the engine braking and the guy's like lunging out of his seat, like almost hits the dash. And he's like, that's the electric engine braking.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So a lot of that stuff is super appealing.
I think the electric, I mean, look, let's face it, unless we come up with a way to make synthetic dinosaurs that we can stick in the ground and they grow oil drums, we're going to run out sooner or later. This is where it's going. Sooner or later, it's where it's going. But I'm not giving up an engine.
Obviously, a
have to.
5.3 and an 80E is still cheaper than a Tesla engine, and
Yes.
the ways to run
Slightly.
it don't exist.
Slightly.
Yeah. So,
And you have that satisfaction of noise and everything.
yeah, that too is also awesome sometimes. So
All right.
You want to try this guy's phone again or no?
Do we want to? Let's try again. Yo, stupid. And that is your name, stupid. So, I mean, I'm not.
Well, my name's Jason Andre, man. I go by Stupid Performance. I'm sorry about the phone.
no problem.
I wanted to share with Matt. He obviously has at least some interest in the electric vehicle. There's actually a guy that he took an E39 BMW and stuffed it with all recycled batteries, a combination of car batteries and laptop batteries, and he beat the full distance of the $150,000 Tesla.
Wow.
The car only had $13,000 in the whole car.
Wow.
And it went 1,200 kilometers on one charge.
I wonder if Edmunds
Damn.
gives it a 10 out of 10.
Maybe.
No, that's incredible.
Ironically, like 3 months later, Microsoft took him to court for giving away Dell Restore CDs, and he's in prison now for 15 months. I'm serious.
That's
All right. I'm not going to get into the
Yeah, that wasn't the ending. I thought. Yeah.
Not at all. But yeah, the electric vehicles are cool, and that guy just kind of reminded me of you. Like he did it on the cheap and with the used stuff and made it happen. And I thought it might interest you as all.
No, that's cool.
Yeah, we'll go check that out. All right, man. Well, thanks for calling.
Later.
All right. Have
ya.
a good night, guys. Bye.
Thanks for calling. You got it out there.
I bet you that guy's in the jail right next to the guy that made the water motor and all these other.
Yeah.
What I guess what else did we go over some stuff that people posted?
Sure,
Like,
go ahead.
I know there was one cost and abilities of different ECUs. Well, we went over a lot of that I think early on. This person says like Holly versus Goldbox versus HP tuners. We went over stock computer stuff quite a bit. I do have a video on the difference in at some length about the Holly versus Goldbox when I installed Holly on my truck because it had a Goldbox on it prior. And I go back and forth about highlights on that. You just look on my YouTube for that. Just search for that. I'm just telling that guy, Stuart.
Now, when you say gold box, just so people that aren't real familiar.
It's an MS3, a Megasquare 3 based ECU that's built in Boyertown by EFI Source, a man named Mike, and his son Mike own the business. Yeah, I helped them. I help them out a lot. They give me stuff to test. I write bass tunes for them. So
No problem.
So it's Megasquirt based.
yes, yeah, it's MS3. Like the board is slightly different, but the processor and the inputs are basically the same. But the layout and the connectivity and some of the stuff is different.
And we learned that there's different ones.
Yeah, then there's like MS3X, which is the first iteration, which is a multiple board, like in a aluminum, like how Megasquirt used to. When people think of Megasquirt, I think they still see that aluminum case and the printer connector on it. That's what MS3X is. And then they redesigned it. Now they have the MS3 Pro and the MS3 Gold Box that have like the nice amp seal connector and a little bit easier to use. And yeah, there's like troll questions in here. Pros and cons of E85 and a weekend cruiser. We did that. People like Squareport. Where do you see slab mechanics going in the future? I think that's a pretty decent question. Like
Electric. We already talked about
yeah, we're going to build Teslas.
Or golf carts.
cheaper,
I think like more of the same thing. A lot of people are like, you're going to have millions of viewers one day and you're going to change what you do. And I don't think that'll ever happen. I think I'll just keep doing what I do. Like more, I think what would be neat is if I think I'm kind of, like you said, I can be bad for sponsor stuff sometimes because they'll send me something and if I don't like it, I'll say I don't like it.
Yeah.
And that's counterintuitive because people are like, you're going to get a show on Power Block one day. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going to ball gargle to sell bully dog programmers. So that's fucking never going to happen.
Yeah, you get
I
some
don't think you guys
kinda-
realize the politics between having a show and promoting something that pays for your revenue. So the fact that I don't have all of that and I do have a regular job, which means I don't have to, can be opinionated, obviously, and I can like things more, but I'll say, hey, I like it more. It doesn't matter. Some people might not, but I fucking hate this and I like this. And I think a lot of people recognize that, and that's why they like to hear what I have to say.
So
about
you're not
stuff.
going to be like Carol Shelby selling that Slick 50 stuff you put
Absolutely
in your oil
not.
and,
No.
oh, it makes your car go better.
I'll be like, this looks like bullshit, and it smells like bullshit too.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And, losing the integrity of what you do, I mean, for money, I guess that's
Then why do it?
the
Yeah.
definition of sellout.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I don't know. I can agree with that. But, I mean, for the amount of views and everything you have, you should be able to monetize this pretty well.
Yeah, I
There
do
should
make
be-
money off YouTube. Absolutely. Yeah, I do. It's certainly not the way I have my advertisements set up too is the minimal amount of advertisements.
Yeah.
Some people like force you to watch an ad before. Mine are all skippable and minimally invasive.
He hates them.
Again, it's just for fun. So I like to make some money off
Sure.
of it so I can continue to buy and build and do whatever.
Yeah, it helps fund all this dumb
But
shit.
I don't want to gouge people. So,
Right.
Yeah. And then, anyway, here's one about reusing head bolts, head gasket, and do torque specs matter? Obviously, I think a fastener has a limit to how tight it can be or how the clamping, like total clamping force. You obviously have less clamping force and then you reach peak clamping force and then it diminishes again, just like adding timing to an engine.
Well, it doesn't diminish; it goes away completely.
Yeah, you just have no force. So I think that making them all even, I think the torque spec itself isn't as important as making sure they're all evenly fastened and not over tightened. A lot of people, I think, over tighten the shit out of them because we constantly get people like, I broke
Yeah.
my head bolt off, and I'm like,
Well, wait a minute. There's engineering behind the
there was actually a
Torque.
complete test done by a guy on Sloppy. We all sent him bolts, and he did shear tests and stretch to yield, and went over ARP, China, used stock, and brand new stock bolts. But I mean, I reuse them all the time. And
No. I'm not saying you can't reuse them. But,
Oh, yeah,
but the amount of torque that you put on a bolt absolutely has effect on whether it's going to stay tight or not.
absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, you can't tell somebody
Yeah.
that torque doesn't matter. Of course, it matters.
I
but
always give people a specification, and I always feel like they go, "Oh, that low," because I do like 65 pounds max, 61 pounds.
as long as it's in the parameters of the bolt,
Yeah.
recommended
'Cause,
bolt.
I mean, you're reusing a torque to yield like aluminum bolt, so I usually don't make them very tight. But yeah, I reuse the head gaskets all the time. I mean, it's a piece of steel. In my opinion, it's hard for a piece of steel to go bad unless you acetylene torched it off the motor, which I have done.
Or if you over torque it.
Yeah, the bolt is
Yeah,
bad.
yeah.
Yeah. But I'll pick them off the floor, stick them on, and knock them down to 60 pounds. And I reuse the head gaskets and the head bolts that were on my 1,000+ horsepower Colorado.
I like that one.
I got to say, I never understood why you couldn't reuse head gaskets other than Felpro.
Well,
I
told
mean,
you.
I
you're
understand
afraid,
if they're graphite or composite and
Yeah.
they crush and then they something, but I would still stick it back on as long as it doesn't tear when you pull it apart.
Well, I mean, if we were doing dyno stuff, we'd pull a head off and use the gasket over
Most
again.
of the
even a
appeal-
composite.
Yeah, most of the appeal in my, with the LS motor is that all the gaskets are reusable.
Yeah, all those,
They're all
the O-ring stuff?
Vuitton O-ring, aluminum, and they don't crush and they don't go bad. I mean, unless you are an idiot and you tear it or it's old or blown out but yeah, I do that stuff all the time.
Sure.
Can you talk about what got you into the sloppy builds? Well, economical stuff and proving people wrong and all that stuff I highlighted earlier when I got into it. And then I found this guy comments on the turbo TTF, means the Turboforms old school version. Like I said, the new one isn't as good. A lot of people will agree with that, but that's where I got a lot of my feet wet. Before I knew anything at all, I was totally dumb. And I jumped on there and I asked some guy, how do you know how much ignition is correct? How do you guys fucking know at all?
Mhm.
And the one guy says, take your rod apart and measure the squish on the wrist pin he was like a top fuel guy. And he made this very short questionable, convoluted answer where he's like, measure the run out of your wrist pin after a pass. And I had no fucking clue what he was talking about. I had to do a ton of research and figure out, that guy like smushes a wrist pin on a pass. And when he smushes it more than
too much,
the amount he regularly smushes it, he knows he has too much. I'm like, wow, that's a real answer.
How many thousands of horsepower is he doing?
It's kind of like a fuck you answer, but it's kind of like a learn on your own answer,
Not exactly applicable.
There's many ways to learn this, and that's what I took from his answer. So that's funny. Like, and then literally it says, how did you decide to grab an old shitbox and go to town with it? Literally a 1320 video posted that the guy's name's John or James something. He's Parrish on the, that's like his username on the internet. He built a Fairmont with a 5.3 swap and a TH400 and won like the street/race class in drag week. And I'm like, I can do that. Like I can force myself how to learn how to do all that. And that's when we did it. So that's why I bought a Fairmont and everything. Cause I'm like, that's cool, ugly Ford. Mm-hmm. And it's a Fox platform. So it's capable for cheap.
I threw mine away. God damn it.
So that's what got me into that stuff. How to determine what your goals should be. I talk about this at length. I don't think I'm gonna go over this very much, but I see everything like when I look at a project, I see horsepower as the currency for the project. So you figure out either how fast you want to go, you have to figure out how heavy the car is, and you have to figure out how much power is going to make it go that fast. If all you want to do is burnouts and stuff, I go over this at length in a lot of my videos where 500 horsepower to the tire through an auto is fucking stupid in a lot of cars. It's really
a lot
dumb.
Of power.
I don't know what people are used to watching videos where people make 1,400 and only trap 130, but like even my truck it makes 540 tire, it's undrivable for a lot of people. It's totally scary.
Yeah.
Like it'll do 80 mile an hour rolling burnout. On the highway, it'll knock the tire loose.
People don't know. They have no
and then
idea.
a lot of the things people don't realize is if you have a 4L80E car and you whack it at a low speed, it shifts through all the fucking gears. It has 150 some mile an hour wheel speed, even if you're only physically going 35 and it takes a while to recover. And it's because they're used to like spinning second in their Mustang with a stick shift, and it's only spinning the tire between 20 and 40 mile an hour. I'm like, no, that fucking thing is lit. It's going to take you 350 feet to get the rear end back. If you touch the brakes, you're going to crash into the grass or a pole. Like it's a totally
like Mustangs.
It's a different.
And I imagine when you're doing this kind of stuff, it's not like you've got a nice new Corvette with every safety feature in the world,
Exactly.
every traction control that will clamp down on this and pull
It's a
this.
pickup
Nothing.
truck.
Yeah, it's a pickup truck. Just put you in the weeds.
Yeah, and
It's like having a Mustang.
So like I always say like one of my thing I push on all these people is when they ask a simple question with no direction, it's too short. I go, what are your goals? And sometimes they get frustrated, but I'm like, well, that's how you yourself figure out a flow chart to reach your goal and what you're going to build and what transmission or what kind of rear or what platformer. If it's going to be easy or expensive, like a 2,500 truck is obviously easy to throw a ton of power at.
Sure.
If you buy a Pinto, it's going to be fucking difficult. Like the car is going to twist. It's not going to want all the power. You're going to need a rear. Then you get into like building a ladder bar, rear end suspension and coil. It starts to get difficult.
Yeah, the worst answer to that question is how fast do you want to go? As fast as I can. That's a terrible thing to say.
Dumb. I'm like, okay, so you have $1 million and you want to buy a screw motor and put it in whatever, or a tube chassis, and oh no, I don't have that kind of money. Well, then that's fucking not as fast as you want to go, probably.
Exactly.
And then if I give you a Fairmont that makes 720 tire, you'll probably piss your pants. That's probably not as fast as you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it starts, and then people say I'm a dick. So
no, but that's the exact right way to ask somebody what they want to do.
Yeah. So I learned how to take jabs. Like I always end up helping people, but I feel like a lot of times I try to make it difficult because if you spoon feed someone long enough, they don't get anything done.
Well, the other problem's got to be here too, is that everybody, and like we've talked about this a million times, back when I was a kid and 20 years before that when Tom was a kid, we had street cars that made 400.
Did you say 20 years?
You just got that up. we had street cars that made 400, and that was amazing.
Yeah.
And a real
that has
fast.
changed quite a bit.
Right.
Yeah, I
So,
talk about that with older guys all the time, and they're like, man, a 13-second car was fucking fast.
Sure.
It was really fast.
Now, I mean,
Well,
it's
kind of fast.
well, I
Well,
mean,
if you showed up at somewhere on the street and you had a car that went 1350, you waxed everybody out of a stoplight, pretty much.
Yeah, for
Unless you went-
most of the people
unless you
you
went
run
to the
across.
racetrack, like one of my friend's dads genuinely had a high 10-second Camaro, and he's like, it wouldn't run, it wouldn't start, it was completely twisted, like the chassis was ruined from whatever. He's like, it didn't drive great. Like it was on or off. Like there's a whole lot of, now you can have all that. You can drive to the track, run 9s, put pump fuel in it, put groceries in it.
But see, did that change expectations of the new hot rod kid today?
Well,
like, did they all walk in and say, well, or, call or send
I
anything
think,
and say, I need 1,000 horsepower?
Yeah,
Why? Well, that's what I read on the internet.
And I watch a lot of 1320 video and I like them, but I think over the years they have partly diluted everyone's preconceived notions of that stuff, because I know one of the guys, that Cletus McFarlane guy, joined the group because we were harassing him quite a bit, where because the Camaro, like the Corvette, it made like 1,200 horsepower or whatever, and we're like, dude, you trap like total shit. Like, don't put out a video that says you make that much power and then trap like a 550 rear wheel. Like, it went the blower on it, it made like 750, and what he was trapping was equating to like 525 rear wheel probably on my dyno.
Okay.
And we were giving him a rash of shit, and he'd jump in there and he's like, I'm just trying to have fun. I'm like, we get that, but what you're doing is influencing an entire generation of hot rodders to think they need a massive amount of power when you don't make that much. And like, this is where we get all these, I don't know. So that's where like
it messes up
the friction of that comes from that. And we try to tell him that, and he's like, you guys are he's pretty cool, but a lot of people are like, you guys are hating on him because he has a Corvette that's cooler than yours. And we're like, no. And then then he says like it has poor aerodynamics or it's heavy. And we're like, way the fucking thing. Bro, dude, I've raced full-size trucks that go faster. It's 4,700 pounds. Your fucking stripped-out Corvette is not 4,700 pounds. Quit it. And then he weighs it, and it weighs like 2,680. And we're like, bro, that's fucking light. Like,
is this the white Corvette?
No, it's the stripped out one.
It's the one without the body.
There's Kyle Loftus, who has the Unicorn C5.
Right. Okay.
And then there's Cletus. His name is Garrett Mitchell, but his YouTube personality is Cletus. And I like some of the stuff that he does, and then some of it, obviously I don't agree with my personality and the way I do things. But he's wildly popular. But I hate that a lot of that stuff, like they'll interview someone and they'll say the car makes 1,400. The part of their defense was the guy says the car makes 1,400. And I'm like, why does it trap 140 miles an hour?
At what weight?
Yeah, like it's a race car, so it's like mid 3s or high 2s.
Well, the thing better be going damn near 200.
The consensus of a lot of these videos is the cars have massive power, but when you watch what they trap, unless they're filming like Yellow Bullet, and the cars are actually fucking retardedly fast. 200 in the 8th is fast, in my opinion.
Yeah.
When they're going that fast, it's hard to argue that it makes a shitload of power. But when the people can't drive and everything else, and they start saying, well, I was spinning or whatever, part of that stuff like really annoys me, because it goes back to my roots of where people were lying and passing lies, not knowing, like they don't fully know. And what I try to do is I might do it, I might take the wrong avenue and be angry right away and be like, there's no fucking way it makes that power. And I can't understand why you guys don't realize that. And they're like, well, you're hating on a GTR. And I'm like, well, the fucking thing should be way faster, in my opinion. And it has shifted from the guy that is proud of all the money he spent to where the person's proud of what the power they make, but not what the car can achieve. And there has to be balance there too, because I'm always not fully happy with a build unless I have a time slip that's decent for for the capability of the vehicle. So,
well, in the end, we're not racing a dyno. We are racing the car.
Yeah.
Track.
Yeah. And what is your dyno track?
People just inherently lie anyway about
it has
power.
gotten worse, and part of me attributes that to the 1320 culture.
Yeah.
I think what they do,
and people don't know.
Internet dumbassery.
Yeah. Well, then what I did is I edited DynoJet software there's a correction factor, and I edited it to say like 1320 video or internet or pay me $50, and that went its rounds.
Somebody just asked about that.
And people are like, you're hating, you're a hater. And I'm like, no, I hate the idea behind doing. Here's the thing. I'm like, you guys are all racers or street racing, and you're saying I make 1,400. And then you get waxed on by a car that makes 500. Isn't the point of street racing to say you make 500 and actually fucking make 1,400 and fucking mop everybody up?
And take everybody's money.
What really pisses me off is the counterculture of people saying they make a shitload and they get waxed by stuff that makes nothing. And at the end of the day, they're still happy with that. And I'm like, fuck, you guys all went backwards so fast in like 2 years. And it makes me angry if you can't tell.
Yep.
All right, we got a guy here. It says Mellow George.
Oh, yeah, that's my buddy with the 3rd gen that I said I converted from carburetor.
Mr. Mellow?
Hey, what's up, guys?
What's happening?
Not much, man. No, I just wanted to call in and say hi to Matt. And just let everybody know that what he's doing for the hot rod community is just, it's awesome, man. Like, I don't know, he's just giving everything out for free. Go online, everything's there. Go to the wiki site, everything's there that you need. When I met him way back, he had his first or second Fairmont, and I had my third gen Camaro, was blow through carburetor, and we got to talking, and when I wrecked it, well, I got rear-ended and totaled the car, and with the the extra insurance money I got from the car being totaled, I converted to fuel injection, and we just put down 923 horsepower with 14 pounds of boost on E85. And previously, I mean, you guys were talking about E85 and gasoline. Previously, I'd done 900 on 20 pounds with gasoline. So that goes to show.
Yeah, we couldn't get the ignition in it
Yeah.
at all. Like, and we just had to add a ton of boost. And then prior, he made like, you made like 750 range on one bar, like 14, 15. And then with we were able to just keep adding ignition and make 9 and change instead of 7.
And what was the static compression?
His is like 9-ish, I think. He has a 408.
It's a 403 standard bore, like a 5,000 silver bore, and it's 9.3 compression. It's got square port heads, guys, L92s.
There you go.
There you go.
Good boy.
It's got a carbureted intake, because I used to run a blow through carburetor, and so I put one of those L-Brock elbows on there with a Chinese 90 millimeter throttle body on it. And the only thing that's actually, I mean, it's an Eagle stroker kit, so it's not the best quality stuff, but it's the forged pistons and stuff. But I mean, other than that, it's all stock stuff. I got valve springs in there, a decent cam, and the turbo is actually a good turbo, but I picked it up cheap. I paid $800 for it. It's a Turbonetics 88 millimeter, but it's comparable to VS Racing. He's selling clones of these things. Basically,
that's what I was talking about. The Billet 80 Borg Warner clone. It's like it's 800 shipped, right? Like 825 shipped or 750.
Yeah,
something?
I think so. Well, he's got the 88 now.
Yeah, he has a sale on them too now, so the price is slightly
different.
Yeah,
they're on sale. Yeah.
For approximately half the cost of a really good Borg Warner built.
Yeah, and that's really good because I mean, a lot of people talk about the Chinese turbos, but they don't know what to buy. So having the right.
And like I said, there's a huge amount of small turbine shit still.
Yes.
This T6 stuff is just starting to come out.
Okay.
Last year or so. The one I had on my truck was actually Varen's prototype. We didn't even know if it would last, and apparently it's doing really good. So.
All right. Well, thanks for calling, Mello. We appreciate it. And you wouldn't go back to blow through, huh?
Well, no, that's the thing. I wanted to get into that a little bit because I was happy with the blow through, and I was pretty knowledgeable. I don't know if you guys ever heard of the Turbo forums, and
I was talking about
on there too. We were on at the same time and didn't know each other, but I learned a bunch from there, and I was messing with power valve channel restrictions and boost reference power valve, so I knew my way around a carburetor. But recently, I just bought the HP tuners, and I had it set up with Matt, a tuning session, and something came up on his end, and he couldn't do it. So I finally got the balls to go ahead and try and mess with it myself, and I surprised myself. I mean, it actually got better. I was just working on the street tune and stuff, but yeah, huge thanks for everything Matt's doing. It's awesome.
Well, this is a perfect example because since you understand like boost reference power valves and everything else, did HP tuners make more sense to you than say the average guy because you knew what you were trying to correct?
Well, it's honestly, it's like a totally different language for me. I mean, everything's in kilopascals. I'm like, I don't know what the hell a kilopascal is. But I mean, Matt told me there's a steep learning curve, but once you get the gist of it, you can, and there's tons of info out there. I mean, Matt has his videos, and then if you go on YouTube and type in HP tuners, there's thousands of videos. So much so that it's almost oversaturated, and what you're trying to look for is hard to find, So it's out there. The info's out there.
All right. Well, good deal. All right. Well, take it easy, man. Thanks for calling.
Yep, no problem. Good night.
See, the thing that bothers me about looking online for that stuff is what happens if you're reading one of these dumbasses that we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's difficult. And I even, what's funny with what I do, I even preface. I'm like, guys, I'm not an expert. I am self-taught, but what I'm going to show you is what works for me. And I've taught people and they have had repeatable good results also. So you can take from this what you want. You can say I'm a fucking idiot, whatever you would like to do.
All right, we got one last guy here, Chris Diamond. You know who this is? Chris,
Yo, what's up, guys?
what's up?
Not much, man. I've been trying to catch up with you guys for a while.
Okay.
All right, have at it.
Nah, man, I just calling in to say what's up. Say the show's awesome. You guys get me through my commute. I'm not sure who the guest is tonight because I just got...
Some asshole that has a YouTube channel that doesn't know when to shut the fuck up.
YouTube guy works on Junkyard Motors. He's kind of a strange cat.
Came in without T-shirts for us.
Takes all different kinds to make us world go around, right?
Yep, absolutely. All right, man. Well, thanks for listening. We do appreciate it. Drop us an instant message, and we'll get shooked up with a T-shirt.
All right, awesome.
Thanks, man.
All right, man.
Thanks.
See ya.
Well, interesting.
We have there's other ones here like how and why a normal 9 to 5 individuals how and why from a normal 9 to 5 individual's viewpoint, not already working in the auto industry, did you get into doing what you are doing now? And well, that's just like I'd say like I'm an extreme hobbyist and I slowly like basically I can attribute a lot of it to do you guys know who Frank Solderidge is?
Yeah.
I met him early on and got involved with him. And I learned a lot from him, and then I started messing around with stuff on my own, and that's where, like, I would build cars, and I'd put, like, 2 different cylinder heads on it and shit, and I'd
Yeah, I
show
remember
up,
that.
and then I'd dyno it, and he'd be like, that's not bad, and I'm like, it has 2 different cylinder heads. He's like, what the fuck are you like, you're insane. And I would do stuff like that, and I would take, he has a lot of, like, raw race car knowledge, how to make a car go fast, like, stuff I knew absolutely nothing about. Like I would push on a car and it would stop making power, and I'm like, I wonder why it's not making power, because in my head early on I'm like, well, if I just keep adding boost it should just keep making power. And he's like, well, no, there's a thing called a turbine and you're backing up the exhaust. And so I had to slowly learn all this stuff. And then he would talk about back pressure. Like he's like, well, when you're over 2 to 1, you're pretty much out, you know, up
done.
shit's creek. Like you need a bigger turbo, you need to change your camshaft to increase cubic inches, balance some stuff out. Like if you get a smaller motor, you'll have a more effective turbine. And a lot of stuff made no sense to me. And then he would talk about like adding CO2 to the gates and like a lot of totally race car stuff that would go over my head. But now I understand a lot of it.
Yeah,
really
connected all the dots.
Yeah, and so over the years of like learning some stuff from him and getting into the extreme part of it, and then stuff that he would never do, I would like, fuck, I'm responsible for this, so I'll do stupid shit. And I would do it, and I'm like, it works great. And I would tell him, he'd be like, I cannot believe that works. It should not work. You shouldn't do that. Don't tell anyone you're doing that.
Well, I mean, I think we did dumb shit like that, like dyno testing. We'd test, like put 1 cylinder head on to see how much better it was going to be.
Yeah, I think a big part of it was we were looking for dynos in the area because we started generating interest and pushing cars and doing stupid shit. And we're like, let's see what they make. And my buddy, through a few friends, I found that paving business my buddy Troy owns, and we would bother them all the time to use the dyno and do stupid shit. And they're like, we don't even want to be here. Why are you dynoing a 1989 Grand Marquis with nitrous? We don't think it's funny. Like, it's not, like, I like nice cars. Why are you, he had a Cobra and a Lightning and stuff at the time, and he's like, what the fuck is this stuff? Like, and we would annoy him so much, he was basically to a point where he's like, how about I give you keys and an alarm code, and you give me money when you come here, and you just fucking stop bothering me with this stuff. So then it started doing that, and then I started getting good at it, and then, you know.
Yeah, and everybody should go back and listen to the first time Matt was on, because he talked about this whole process of how you got, into the dyno thing.
That becomes like a metaphor for my life, is that I'm like, just go back and watch the video, and people that have joined this week don't know about, it starts to get, yeah. So we run into that, but then it's what's funny is what I think is funniest about Sloppy is when if someone makes a post that is like it's dumb and they should have looked, but they don't know, and I'll accept it, and before I can even make a reply, someone's already trolling them, but giving them the facts that they're just doing what I would do. But they're helping him, but trolling him. But I'm like, oh, I don't even have to touch this one. It's already fucking off to the races.
See what I wouldn't want it to become, and I always make fun of the Linux guys. That like if you're looking for help in Linux, they'll be like, dude, the answer's there, read.
Yes, and that's what bothered me most about Megasquirt products.
Yeah. Because
you're like, hey, I have it wired and I'm getting fuel injection, but my spark isn't working. And they're like, read the Mega manual.
Yeah.
You're like, I fucking read it 6 times and it doesn't make any sense because it was written by guys that look at a green screen and eat ramen noodles 24 hours a day and they don't know how to interact with real fucking people and I don't understand what this says.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, well, and then they would give you help. Like if you gave them, but at that point, most people would be turned off by it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I struggle with this, like I said, like 100 out of, like 1 out of 100 people, I'm really proud that like, they used everything and I helped them and they were able to help themselves.
Yeah.
But then it really annoys me like when someone just wants stuff handed to them and then like with the issue with that is they're never going to finish it or what. I'm like, you got to want to help yourself. I want to help people that want to help themselves. But
I think what you would really, the best to hope for is that you put somebody in the path to start doing things and then they learn.
Yeah. And then what I fear sometimes that I'm going to be that guy that pushes people away from cars. But I'm like, at the same time, I don't think I'm that mean to people. Like sometimes I tell them what I think they need to hear.
Right.
Like, even if I annoy you enough, hopefully I annoyed you enough to get it done.
Mm-hmm. and just handing people the answers is not an answer.
Not, and that's what I realized too. And
Yeah.
I'm always on to that. Like, cause then people are like, I allow a bunch of shit posts and people are like, well, we always go back and forth because we do admin approval on posts and I turn it off every now and then. And people are like, please God, turn it back on. And then other people make posts. My post never gets approved. You guys are dickheads. So I'm like, well, you probably ask shit questions or you share stuff that says like, where it can't be shared. The privacy settings are all screwed up. Attachment unavailable, or you're posting mechanics memes, or you're asking why your Ford Taurus doesn't run, which is not really what this group is for.
Right.
So you're being annoying.
Well, you got an awful lot of members in that group, don't you?
Yes. So it starts to get difficult. It starts to get a little watery. Obviously, a lot of them are not technical experts that can always help you with some fantastic gem all the time. But a lot of it does come through, and people always complain that the group is going to shit, or we have too much of this, or too much, and there's no happy medium. There's just always swinging the scale back and forth.
Sure.
Because as soon as I start cracking down on everybody, they're like, this is Nazi Germany, fuck you. And then like as soon as you start letting too much in, they're like, everyone's an idiot. And it's someone that's been there 2 weeks that hasn't helped. It's calling new people an idiot.
Yeah.
So it starts, So that's the giant struggle of power with having 60,000 people who, want to all do their own thing and want everything handed to them all at the same time.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, we got one guy from Utah. Let's take this guy because he's from Utah.
Yeah.
I didn't even know we had a guy from Utah.
Utah, you're on the air.
Hey, man, how's it going? I love you guys' show, but I just want to call in and thank Matt personally. I started watching his stuff like a few years ago. Saw some obscure like Mustangs that were turboed, lighting off high gear burnouts and stuff. But in like the last
we would never do that.
In like the last 8 months, I really just watched basically like every video of like the past couple of years and all of the LS1 techs and stuff, and kind of waded through all the questions and looked on your wiki page and the forums and stuff, and
it's all still there, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, people can still help themselves with that.
Yeah, even
Sorry.
Cocoon survived. But I ended up this summer helping 4 friends mega squirt cars just based off all of your stuff and your information. Didn't really even have to ask that many questions, surprisingly.
Huh.
And
you didn't, and no one said, read the mega manual, it's all there.
Yeah, and the coolest thing was like surprising people that like didn't think that stock stuff could handle it. Like my buddy has a 1980s BMW. It's a 4-cylinder. Everyone says like, that thing will never make power or whatever. And it's out waxing like Focus RSs that are brand new. And people are like, what the heck? Like,
yes.
How are you doing this? And it's like a micro squirt, 80-pound injectors, a VS Racing 40-millimeter.
A $300 standalone with wiring harness. And people are like, that exists?
Oh, yeah, like I take some friends for a ride in it, and they're like, holy shit, you guys did this? And we're like, yeah, and I've literally been tuning for like 2 weeks, and we figured this out. And
yeah, that's all the fun in it.
That's where I feel like Sloppy Mechanics is awesome. So I just want to, thank you. You've been awesome, and all your stuff that you guys put out.
Well, that's great. Well, I mean, one of my one of my favorite things to say is that giving hot rodding back to the people. So that's primarily what I'm interested in. Because it's always that backwoods shared misinformation kind of shit going on.
You're kind of like a less crazy Bernie Sanders.
People say the Robin Hood of automotive or whatever.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thanks, man. Thanks for calling. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. I got one question came through. Oh shit, what was it?
I don't know.
You touched people across the country.
Oh, yeah, man. Australia, I'm pretty popular in Canada and like Sweden and Norway and that kind of shit. The crazy Volvo dudes.
Well,
Everyone's name is Bjorge and shit like that. Those guys are crazy.
Any slop guys?
Yeah. Yep.
There we go.
Okay. Two questions. One of them was you touched briefly, and sorry, Paul, about the decapping of injectors, like to get people by.
Yeah, I did in complete videos, and I think there's a wiki thing on how to do it, what happens, who to send it to, all sorts of stuff on that. But what's the main question?
Well, like what can you expect to get out of a set of economical injectors?
There's actually a group on Facebook. I mean, I can give you the general gist here. Most common injector is like the truck injector, it's just 25 to 28 pounds. And then when you decap that, it ends up being approximately 75 pounds.
Wow.
So it's 3 times the size, and it has all of the, people are funny. Obviously, you need to retune the vehicle once that's on. But here's the thing. A lot of the capability around sloppy builds hinged on buying a Siemens Deck 80-pound injector, which has come down in price, but it's still $330. When you're building something economically, if you take the stock injector, again, which comes with the stock computer that you buy with accessories and everything else, and you just apply this simple decapping, you be careful, obviously. And then my best advice is to get 2 sets or 10 of them and send them to someone to get independent, obviously, to get flow check, because someone might be like, these are all bad. Here's a set of IDs for fucking $1,200. And they might hook you on that. But anyway, because the motor has 140 to 240,000 miles, roughly. Obviously, like all of those have that. Some of them might be bad. They might have shit in them. And I've run into that where I decapped 2 sets and I sent them in, and one of them flowed like 20% less than the others, and one did not flow at all. Like it was just junk. And then the other one, since I had so many, he was able to build me a set within like 1.1% of each other. You don't have to do that. It's not, but people harp on all of ours are flow match between 1.5%. So what's funny is you can do that with a shit injector with 100,000 miles. And then what's nice is the guy that I use, Eric Durr, if you send him the injectors, he automatically replaces the drop-in particulate filters.
Yeah, little screens in the top.
Puts new O-rings, new caps, flows them, writes a number on them, individually bags them, cleans them, does ultrasonic, flows before and after, all that stuff, gives you an entire data sheet of what they flow, and then he recommends which ones you should run in an 8-cylinder application that flow the closest and writes the percentage of difference.
That's pretty
And what does that cost?
It's like under $75. So that's quite a bit far off from $80.
Yeah.
Or I mean, $330 for 80s.
Yeah.
So if you're building a budget, a lot of people are like, well, they're only $300.
And that's the key thing here. We would certainly never recommend to a guy that was looking to have absolute best of the best.
Of
Every
course.
horsepower matters. This is not what you do.
I think some people don't understand that about me, is that I like nice things too. Like I like the Tesla. I like, my buddy Mark built 2 crazy race cars with a much bigger budget than me, but I tune it, but he applies a lot of the sloppy theory to it. Like we have the stock exhaust manifolds and intake manifold and air-to-air intercoolers, and the car easily goes like low 8s on super low boost, and people walk over like, what the fuck is done to this? Why does it look like nothing? Where's the refrigerator-sized intercooler?
Right.
Air to water? Where's all the ice? What's going on? I was lied to. And I'm like, kind of, maybe, sort of.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. And then it has stock Corvette iron manifolds on it, and it has like small piping and shit plastic intake. And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't seem to be holding it back. So what all did you spend needless's on?
Right. Right. And of course, there are times where you need to spend that money.
Yeah.
But
That's like, I think like that's like it's a neat look back, looking at sloppy mechanics and applying that to some other things. You can have $100,000 car and be like, well, maybe I don't need all this stuff. Did I ever quantify a result out of this money? I think it's good to look at all that stuff you're doing and make sure it's worthwhile at some point.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Todd? Questions?
That's right. Did you, when you did the separate heads, was one cast iron, one aluminum the one time?
No.
No? All right. Thought I read that, but guess not.
That was your question.
Yeah.
I would do that.
Could you do that? Could you do that for Tad?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I just need to find a fucking
The
set of
minister.
cast
All
iron.
right. You got any other good questions that came on over there?
I'm scrolling through right now. Internet power versus real life. We touched on that, I think, enough with the how much I like 1320, but I think that they're delivering an inaccurate message to the masses. And then they countered me with, well, that's what the person tells us. And I'm like, well, you should throw it back in their face and be like, no fucking way does your car make that much power. Like, you should argue with them as part of being some sort of automotive journalist. You should give people shit instead of just.
Well, it might as well be the pits at Englishtown too. So,
Yeah, like, I don't know. And then I can understand where people might be less willing to participate in a 1320 video if they may be harassed in front of a million viewers. I can understand that part of it too, but at least admit it to me or something. I don't know. And then maybe I'm being completely out of line by asking that much out of people. So who knows?
Mention the turbocharger guy again, because
VS Racing?
Yep, VS Racing.
VSRacing.net. And also, if you're anywhere near the Sloppy Facebook pages, if you ask, they will tag Varen. And he'll be like, "Oh, guys, what's up?"
Cool.
He's super easy to work with.
Perfect. Okay.
Cool.
Anything else here really interesting?
I'm scrolling through. Top 5, 10 do's and don'ts for novice tuners. We could do that. Single versus twins, fact versus fiction. We went over a lot of fast versus fiction. I think single turbo is always better for my aspect because you have only one problem to worry about instead of two problems with twins. Most of the time the power is negligible unless you're looking at making, like my buddy's Camaro with twin billet 85s. Obviously he has two of those because one doesn't make as much power. Like he wants to have ceiling of 2,000 horsepower, so he has two 1,000 horsepower turbos.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like packaging, plumbing a single turbo is much easier in majority of cars. Some cars, the engine bay is so tight, it's easier to put two small twins, packaging reasons.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it all depends. It's like I said, do what you can with what you got. Top 5 to 10 do's and don'ts for novice tuners. It's tough to go over that in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
That's sadly, I would say read the Junkyard LS stuff, and a lot of it I learned on my own, and it's very application specific. Start slow. You can't put a car together and hope to come out swinging with 700 horsepower sometimes. If you follow along with one of my builds and load one of my tunes, it's very close. I mean, you might be able to just come to the dyno and you might be able to, but if you're learning how to do like a broad range of specifics, see what, like I said, always try to quantify a result. Make sure, because that's part of dyno tuning, and tuning at the track is if you add timing and it doesn't go any faster, adding timing isn't going to...
Yeah, adding more is not going to do it.
Me and my friend Cameron have a joke about having like a second wind of horsepower.
Yeah.
You can't just... At 5, it's negligible. 6 makes no difference. 7 is going backwards. At 10, you're not going to magically start gaining 20 rear wheel per degree because you went to the second wind. We always joke that doesn't exist. So if you're not getting it out of it, engines, in my opinion, I'm not an expert, but I've tuned a lot of different things, and they'll tell you when they're done. So you don't need to push past that point. There's something going on.
Yep.
Find it, work with it, or lately, like we've been changing the fuel or, turbo or whatever else.
Actually, I like how he's kind of proved that the powdered rods aren't all as delicate as you think. I mean, they bend, but they don't. Everybody's thinking they're going to shatter.
There's a bunch of motors where we made dyno pulls, and we dropped off power. And we're like, you take it apart and you have
wonky rods.
Piston height is shorter on a lot of the rods.
Yeah, and counterweights.
And eventually,
hitting the bottom.
sometimes you'll hear them hitting the crank because the piston will actually shrink so far that the skirt starts hitting the counterweight. I've done it a bunch of times because people will be like, post a video and be like, "What's this noise?" And we're like, "Sounds like hitting the piston."
The guy Jeff that just finally got his thing together, and we'll tell all our listeners, because for Jeff to go out of the box and go there, I think it was pretty good. He had Matt at Tune Time tune it to get him close, and went to the racetrack and went 1090 at 133. No, I went 129. Very soft timing, all easy stuff. I mean, that to me is a hell of a number because the car weighs 4,400 pounds, and it's a nice car to drive. It's one of those Chevy SS.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I had a
neat car.
G8 GT.
Yeah.
With a Maggie on it.
Yep.
Yeah. Because I don't own anything nice. But there's a neat one here that says, talk about why mainstream hot rodders feel like they need to buy aftermarket parts when they don't need any. He said none, but I'm going to say any. But there's people frequently like, what do I torque my ARP rod bolts to on my completely stock bottom end motor? And we post pictures of rods completely clean off the motor with the rod bolts intact. And we're like, what the fuck? The rod can't handle the power that the stock rod bolt can. Like, all of the force pushing the piston down is not being held in by the rod bolt.
No.
And then they're like, well, I swing a lot of RPM. I'm like, I swung 7,200 for 40,000 miles in my turbo 2500, tickling the limiter all day. And that never had, it never threw a rod.
Well, not only that, like Tom, we talked about it. You take one of these little motors, like the 5.3s, you know, they're a small bore.
Yep.
The piston doesn't
Light
weigh
piston.
anything.
Yeah, 378. The rotating assembly, really. Yeah, and then I think a lot of it comes from like the repetitive lying on like TV shows like that, where people are like, a good product has a good result. A lot of times installing that gives you a worse result if you didn't need it.
Yeah.
Like, I ran into a couple times where I built a motor out of spare parts and I had no oil pump, and someone gave me a Melling high volume, and all I ended up doing was emptying my pan into the head and ruining my bottom end. When a stock pump out of a 240,000 mile dirty sludgy pickup would have been fine, because that's what I always run. So I think and then I think a lot of people like to do the chest bump, old school, like hot rod stuff. Like, I spent a lot of money, I'm awesome. So they say they have a lot of buy all the chrome parts out of the Summit catalog. Like, I say that a lot. And then Jamie posted a question. I think it's like a neat thing to do also, but it says, how do you deal with negativity people bring to what you do some days? There are a lot of people who do not like what you do and say it causes issues for them as a business. And, you know, she says she already knows the answer, but a lot of people, you know, might be interested in hearing that. But yeah, like, a lot of times people will like put Sloppy on like a negative light, and I'll try my best to just tell them. A lot of them don't realize what I'm doing, so I try to explain like what I reiterated with earlier. You know, it's about going fast for cheap. It's not saying that everything good is needless or expensive or quality isn't worthwhile, because there's a lot of quality stuff that I think is great, and depending on what you're going to build, sure. And I'm not going to ever slam anybody for spending a lot of money on something unless they have like a lackluster result with all that money. I'll be like, well, you should have just. But yeah, and then I have people who like who say like Sloppy affects their business or whatever, and then people in the same realm are like, well, if what Sloppy Mechanics does is affecting your business, you might need to relook at how you do business.
Sure.
And then so there's all sorts of facets of it, and I never, you know, I put some people on blast, but maybe they need to be on blast. I don't know. It's you have to take.
Well, I mean, it's all that comes back to the same thing we just talked about with the injectors.
Yeah.
You know, what's your
goal?
Yeah. What's your goal? If you're trying to build a car to have fun with and maybe do 80-mile-an-hour burnouts, you don't need a set of expensive injectors.
Like I say to people, the entire powertrain in my Colorado right now that makes 660 through an auto, was $3,200. And I posted the entire spreadsheet of every cost, and that's down to coolant, oil, filter, like everything. So, and then the entire build, I think, is like in the mid eights, and that's including the vehicle. Because I posted that spreadsheet and it said like 8,400, and people were like, "Well, that's not bad." And then they were like, "Oh shit, the cost of the Colorado is there."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Yeah, I spent like $3,400 on this stupid fucking Colorado. Normally, I would buy a $600 Fairmont. So imagine where that budget would be."
Right. What motor came in that thing?
It had the 4-cylinder in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I dynoed it. With Jamie and I dynoed it. It made 104 horsepower or something. It was tired. It had like 220 on it. Yeah.
All right. Anything else, Thomas?
No, we hit it all. We hit a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
I think this was rather productive.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it was
yeah,
good.
I think we got a bunch of these questions.
You know, I got one question. Last question. I get the last question because I pushed the stop button.
Thanks for calling.
That guy that I was helping, Jeff, just this past weekend, when the one that actually went pretty good. What did you ever do any like CTSVs or like kind of real regular stuff like that?
Only a few.
Okay.
Yeah, because the Gen 4 stuff is totally different, and the 6L80E is a pretty sensitive transmission.
Right.
Like I know a lot of guys that get paid really good money to do that stuff, and obviously it's worth it for them. The 4L80E and stuff is easier to tune, but there's so many small things you have to look for. I had the G8 with a 6L80, and it did pretty good. The CTSV actually is a 6L90. Someone might blast me, but it's very similar, 6-speed auto.
Right.
But the tuning in that is more sensitive. I have done a few, like bolt-on cars and stuff like that.
Do you remember if you were leaning on a supercharged one like that, what the air inlet temperature could be?
No.
Yeah.
No, I know people, the stock ones, do get hot, especially when you pulley them. So there's a lot of cooling mods done for
Yeah.
factory blower cars. And then that's where a lot of people see the biggest gains is they do like the trunk ice kit. I hate air to water systems. I think it's totally like, there's a lot of people who do air to water stuff. And then my friend builds that car and I'm like, let's do air to water. And it goes fast, super fast. And we never fuck with what we call it beer warmers, because people always like to joke about putting their beers in the ice tank.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, your fucking ice tank's 200 degrees. How's that Miller Lite at 200 fucking degrees?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Because that car that went 1090s on those passes, the inlet air temperature was like 167.
Yeah.
And we made some changes, and now like he didn't get to go back to the track for hard passes, but we definitely slowed the rise down dramatically with just some very minimal changes.
Like physical changes or
yeah, physical
tune
changes.
Okay. Yeah.
Physical changes.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't have anything to do with the tuning side of it because I've never done that, and I wouldn't want to fuck with this car. I put the motor together. That was enough. But I was just wondering, like, because this thing survived drag passes at 167 degrees, and it had 8 degrees of total timing at like 11 pounds of boost, and I think it has like 9.5 compression.
Yeah, that all makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, but now that, like, what I'm asking is if you drop this down from say 160,
you might be able to get more ignition in it.
130, yeah. How much more ignition could it tolerate?
Switching the car to ethanol and seeing if it responds well to ignition advance, or dropping the inlet temperature. I haven't had a lot of experience with like blower cars like that, but I do know people. I have a guy that brought his ZR1 a bunch of times, which is similar.
Yeah.
And he switched it to E and was able to put a lot more ignition in the car. And then also with alcohol fuel, sometimes they say the inlet temperature doesn't work as hard because of the cooling effect, spraying into the ports. It's not much, but it does.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if E85 works quite as drastically with that as regular alcohol.
Yeah.
Well, doesn't Jeff have meth kit or something?
It helps
No,
from what I've
off.
seen.
Meth
From what
kills,
I've
dude.
seen on a hot day, and you're making passes, the car's coolant temperature does not get as hot.
Yeah.
It's better, but obviously it's not like a non-intercooled alcohol car with like no radiator.
Okay. And that flex fuel sensor you talked about would work in Jeff's car.
Correct.
Oh.
They sell kits. There's basically Dave Steck, DSX Tuning, sells like comprehensive flex fuel kits that bolt on to Gen 4 stuff.
Perfect.
And then you would go to someone that can do that. And then, you literally can just drive around on gasoline, go to the track, dump in E till it's over. Like, because people could argue about it all day, but I have a lot of tuner friends that say anything 50, 60% and up basically has the same knock resistance as 90-some%. You're just taxing your fuel system less. So they say they'll tune it for like E50, E60. So you just got to get your content up above that, and you can race it pretty hard like that. So,
and I'm sure people will argue about that.
For sure, because people sell E98 fuels.
Yeah.
So to profit off of that, you have to say that it's better.
Well, if one of the larger components of E85 or ethanol-based fuels is to avoid detonation, then you need enough to dampen detonation.
Yeah.
To be able to tolerate more time.
And then I've had some people say that like they tune cars professionally. They say that that little bit of gasoline actually helps the combustion process in most street cars, which I don't know enough about thermodynamics and internal combustion engines to say if that's a good result or not. But I've seen extremely good results on 60-some% ethanol. So I can't imagine that maybe I could do a test one day is push it to 50%. It'd be nice to do an all motor car.
Yeah.
Take 10%, which is most pump gas, and then push it to 50, and then push on ignition until it diminishing gain, and then get like a can of that E98 and drain the entire system and get it above 90%.
See what kind of real difference there is.
And then see if it takes, if 50 and 90% have the same amount of ignition lead before diminishing return, obviously. But then there's an argument. That's an all-motor car. In this situation, it's not a blower car at its limits, blah, 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 blah. So that's when I do a video, I say to people, like, that's most of the time I'll say, like, this is my result at this stage. Take from that what you give,
And I know you've had guys that are in this industry come back at you a little bit. You know, we talked about it in the beginning of this, you know, but yeah, I gotcha. All right. Well, I think that was pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, answered a lot of questions, actually cleared more than a few things up for me.
Okay.
So it actually, if it helped me, who doesn't know dick about tuning like the late model OEM stuff, it had to help a lot of people. And as far as selection goes, just tell everybody, Matt, I mean, I'm sure they can all find it, but give everybody all your resources where they can find you.
Oh, okay. The easiest way is to go to sloppymechanics.com. And then from there's just a majority of links. And then that will ship you to I run a YouTube channel, and then I believe there's links on there to the Facebook page. Like it's called the Sloppy Mechanics public page. And then there's like many other facets, like the Vimeo page. It does the for sale videos on like how to tune HP tuners. I'm going to do Megasquirt stuff on there soon. Just a bunch of that stuff. We have a forum that I keep trying to, because I feel like forums are dead. And that's one of the reasons why everyone is so short attention span.
Yeah.
Facebook group, they ask a question and it gets buried.
Yeah.
And then when someone tries to search for it, it's fucking hard.
And I know exactly one of the problems I had. And we actually did this. We wrote forum software for these stupid circle track guys.
Yeah.
And the reason we did it that way, it's threaded.
Yes.
It's not just linear.
And
Because
you can
when
search and
you're
have
looking at
topics.
linear stuff, it goes away. It's just stupid. You can't have a good discussion that
And
way.
I want it to be like the Turbo forums, but I can't get the people to the interaction level that it needs because everyone is like, well, I'll just ask on the public page.
Yeah.
It's tough. I can't make the push. I would love for it to get there, but obviously that's the best way to do it because there's like a builds board.
Yes.
And people can go in and look at the build and see the parts list. And even though like if you're looking at one of my projects and you're wondering what parts I used, on the wiki page, there's a lot of my most popular builds, exactly what is used in it. And I even have like the tune files posted for that build and like as much information as I can put in there as possible. And people will still ask what camshaft is in something. So
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. They don't know, but
3/4 race.
Yeah, I think Facebook and things like that have fucked things up.
it's ruining it for, as far as the whole the hierarchy of information is very hard to produce.
There's
Facebook
nothing
page.
worse to me than looking at a linear forum and you're looking at somebody is answering at the very bottom something that was posted from the second post.
Whoever's arguing or shit posting the most gets pushed to the top.
Yeah.
Yep.
The social festering
That's
is happening
terrible.
the most often instead of the most productive thing is hardest to find. Yes.
Well, we'll leave that alone because I'll sound like a grumpy old man for the next half hour.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, I think this is all pretty good. Were you happy, Ted?
Fine.
All right, good. Well, as long as you were happy, that's all that matters.
That's all we work for, Ted.
Actually, pretty loud.
This.
Like the compressor stopped working
Stop
again.
working again.
Well, I can fix that on my side. There we go. All right, so we'll see all you guys next time. Thanks.